Wouldn't be a council meeting without a chain of office.
Don't worry, I would have reminded you.
So it's 7 o'clock and I want to thank everybody, welcome you all to our virtual town hall. And thank you for the residents who are either joining us on YouTube or are here on Zoom to be in open forum. Thank you to council. I meant to go back today and count how many council meetings this has been that we have done on virtually like this, but I'm thinking it's going on about 6 or 7, including public meetings. And everyone is running just a tiny bit smoother. And for that, I want to thank staff and our incredible IT team for making this happen. I can tell you it's not the case across the province. There's approximately 33% of Ontario's 444 municipalities that have not had a single online meeting. In fact, just simply delegated authority to their CAO since March. And many municipalities who, while are still having council meetings, they've canceled all their committee meetings. So, and sometimes very large, like municipalities like, there's a young lady in Belleville that I mentor, and she is on 2 committees of council in Belleville, and it's a population of over 80,000 people, and they haven't had a single committee meeting since the beginning of COVID. So I think it's a testament to us and the fact that we've been able to, when you look at the agenda tonight and all the work that's going on over and above just regular council meetings, I think a testament to our staff. And also I'd like to suggest to you tonight that it's Canada Day coming up this weekend. So I've got my red and white on for Canada Day, and we don't normally have a July meeting. We will have one meeting in July, but I just wanted to make first of all, a very happy Canada Day to everybody. And I see some of my fellow councillors have their red on as well. So with that, I will open the meeting and ask that you all understand that your microphone is muted, and I can see they all are, and thank you for that. And to let you know that public comments made during this meeting are both audio and video recorded and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. And so with that, I would ask we'll start with open forum. And our open forum list tonight, we have many people who are participating with us this evening. So I will start by asking Linda Irwin, who wanted to be part of open forum, if you'd start your video and your audio at this time. And if we could, because we've got so many speakers, if we could keep comments to around 2 minutes, that would be very much appreciated. We have an extremely full agenda this evening, and it's going to take us some time to get through it. So, Linda, are you able to share with us? There you are. Welcome. You're still muted, so we can't hear you yet.
Okay, there we go. You can hear me now?
Yes, very good. Whenever you're ready.
Yes, we received the letter about the development over in Sandy Cove, and we were a little concerned that our property value may decrease. Any questions I asked pertinent people in the area agreed it could have an effect. The green space over there is lovely. I'm not sure that it's prudent to build on that. Our property value, that's most important to us. It's our nest egg. It's going to help us down the line when we retire, which is coming soon. Habitat for Humanity is a wonderful thing. I know it is. I just wonder if there's another way to do this. And I made a suggestion about that developers in the area be asked to provide certain properties for that specific development, rather than put them across the road from us, these developments, right next to a retirement area. And I just asked the question. I don't want to appear insensitive for, you know, but we are concerned, and we're in close proximity where we live. So I did raise the question about crime levels in the area going up. I don't know if they will or they won't. I've asked different people in the real estate business, and they did say that that tends to come with these things. So I think they're all questions everyone needs to ask. And like I say, I don't want to seem insensitive. I do believe in Habitat for Humanity and all the volunteers that make it happen. I just wonder about the development being across the road from us. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Irwin. It sounds like your dog was not very happy with it
No,
either.
he was outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Now your options are, so I just want to, and all of the people who are here tonight, I believe there's 4 speakers on this same topic. So
Right.
if I could please just let you all know now that after open forum, we will have a delegation tonight from Mr. Robert Sekoja he's the CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Huronia, and he'll be doing a deputation tonight. And then later on in the evening, under one of the staff reports, which I didn't circle, so I don't know which one it is, but then council will debate that item. So if you're welcome to do one of 2 things, well, 3 things really. You could just log off now, or you can just mute and turn off your video and stay in for the rest of the session to listen, or you can log off and go to watch on YouTube. So whatever is best for you. And thank you very much for being part of our meeting. We appreciate that very much. Next is Carly Mellon. Carly, if you're on, could you please turn on your video and your audio at this time?
Yeah. Hi. Trying to start my video and it says the host has stopped it.
Okay, so we'll get working on that, but we can hear you, so that's great.
Great.
And there you are.
Hi.
Welcome, Carly, and I welcome you to start whenever you like.
Thank you. My name's Carly Milan. I'm the owner of 3134 25th Side Road. So I'm the actual place right beside the piece of land just north of it. And I bought my house in August, less than a year ago, and I'm a public school teacher in Toronto for the TDSB. So I read through the staff report, and I just wanted to touch on a few points I had concerns about. The first thing is that the land to be donated keeps being referred to as vacant land and an area that has not been identified as a future park. I just want to screen share. Oh, am I allowed to screen share? I took a picture of the park today because I'm not sure how many of you have seen it. Okay, well, that's all right. It is already a park. It is a beautiful, giant green space that people use all day to walk their dogs, to play with their kids. I didn't inquire with the city when I bought my house if the area was going to be developed or sold because I thought it was already a park. It's already that beautiful and used. So I just wanted to say that point. The next thing I just wanted to say was that when you drive in our neighborhood, it is all single-story buildings. And here's the thing, I'm not in my backyard person. I actually really support Habitat for Humanity. I work with marginalized communities in my job. I fully support it as long as it can fit into the reason I moved here less than a year ago. Like I could have lived in a suburb, but I didn't want to. I wanted to live in this type of neighborhood. So the land itself right now is already zoned as a single-story land. And from what I understand reading the brief is that one of the things the council is considering is rezoning, which I'm assuming means going up more than 1 story. One thing the brief said is that attention will be paid to ensure the buildings are aligned with the character and vision of the neighborhood, Well, the character and vision of the neighborhood are one-story homes. And so I am more than happy for Habitat for Humanity, if they don't want to keep this as the lovely park it already is, to at least keep it as one story. Because one of the things in the brief as well, they compared it to the development just south of Locke, that very large development. But comparing those two is erroneous, because that development is offset from 25th. It is well treed and surrounded by those trees. Visually, that isn't what you're seeing. You're still seeing the trees, you're still seeing the nature, you're still seeing the single stories. And the space on 25th, just south of me, the parcel of land that's up for debate, is right there. It is not set back. If anything more than a single story is put there, it really is going to affect the feel of the community. And that's the reason I came here. That's the reason that everybody wants to be here. And in Innisfil, that's the thing. We have our own little hamlets. This is Sandy Cove, that's Alcona, that's whatever. But single story is sort of what this is. So I do support it, and I support Habitat for Humanity if they can fit within what's already here, because I sort of think that's only fair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milan. And did you hear what I said to Ms. Irwin about your choices of staying on, or so you can?
Yes, thank you. I'll stay on and listen. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks. Next is Susan Martin. Hi,
Hello.
welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to council tonight. So I'm Sue Martin. I've lived at 3129 25th Side Road for 34 years. So that's right across from this parcel of land. And I'm bringing forward some concerns from about 25 neighboring homeowners regarding the potential development of land at 3122 25th Side Road. So we're really opposed to the development of the property there. And here are some of our concerns. The loss of green space. So this community has enjoyed the park area for family and community activities such as dog walking, playing with children, flying kites. It is a place the community gathers for holidays such as Canada Day. It's a great asset to the sense of community, and it would be greatly missed as a park land. The environmental impact. This is an LSRCA regulated area. The stream runs down to Lake Simcoe. There are many birds and amphibians living in the area. And the property in question is frequented regularly by deer, foxes. There were even beavers swimming in the little river yesterday. The number 3 is the impact on private wells. So historically, development in this area has had a huge impact on our private wells, including contamination and lowering the water level, and some have never recovered. So this is a real concern. Yes, we may have an option to hook up to town water, but if the development impacts our wells, then we really don't have a choice. Number 4 is sewage management. Listed in the report under background, it states that both municipal water and sewer services run past the property on the 25th Side Road. We've been informed previously that the sewer line is a high pressure line and that there's no option for residents to hook up. So we need to understand, how would any development be supported by the town sewer system? How would this work? Number 6 is, again, the impact on housing prices and resaleability. And that's a real big concern. Number 7 is impact on traffic. This is a residential area with many children living on the 25th. It's already becoming a higher traffic area, and this will only increase with that development. And lastly, just a concern around the process by which this was communicated. There was no signage, there was few bordering homeowners were informed. A letter was received June 12th, indicating that the information would be posted on the 17th. I couldn't find it, and a number of other people couldn't find it until the 19th. So that left us a weekend to gather our concerns and be able to register to present to council by Monday. So, you know, we need to understand what's the best way to be informed in a timely manner, because we want to be involved in our community. It's very important to us. We would really like it to remain as parkland. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martin. And we did also get a copy of your of that today by the clerk. So we all have that in writing.
Thanks.
As well. So thank you. And next is Daniel Fortunado.
Yep.
Hello, Daniel. Whenever
How
you're
are you? Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm in my car. Sorry, I just finished an inspection here. I'm a local realtor. I live in Vaughan, but I bought the house there. So I'm meeting some of my neighbors here at 3140 25th Side Road. So just a few houses down from the proposed land. So I just want to go over some quick points. Most of the previous people just stated a majority of them, but I'll go over in a little bit of a quicker time frame here. Crime rate, there exist numerous studies, a positive correlation to increase of crime rates surrounding local social community or government housing, meaning, I guess, more likelihood of crime in the area. Traffic study, like I mentioned previously, we don't know what kind of traffic study was done or how many homes are proposed. The infrastructure might not be able to handle it as explained or addressed with the well water. That's gonna affect people's well water supply or cleanliness, as well as the septic bed. This all could help or could increase our insurance premiums. Who's going to back up these higher costs for insurance if that affects those issues? Resource depletion, using additional resources, sewage, water, electricity, higher levies for residents, higher potential, I guess. So all these things could essentially affect rental rates. I myself don't live in the property. I have it rented. You're going to have these additional low costs for people. I understand you're trying to get people in the door, but now that's lowering all the rental rates in the area, and essentially would decrease property value and saleability. Who's covering the residual decrease of our rental rate on the properties? Who's going to want to rent somewhere near where high crime rates may potentially be because of the social housing? What else do I have here? Sorry, I have a whole list. To me, the area is heading in the right direction. We have Friday Harbor Resort, both attracting more investors and more growth. Lots of demand to live in the area. We have the future Cortel development, Bel Air Shores, the new GO train at the 20th line. One would say, why wouldn't you put community housing closer to major infrastructure and not in a rural area? It really doesn't make sense. You want to keep it so that they're very connected. If they are low income, they wouldn't want to be driving everywhere. Who's going to manage the property? We don't know how it's going to be managed, what kind of issues might arise and how they'll be dealt with. As well as I've heard, just doing some research on Habitat for Humanity, I mean, there's some scam issue or people talking about scams. Okay, the land is donated to them. What happens and who has the say what they do with the property after, who they sell it to, and who gets, obviously they would be getting the money from that, so it doesn't really help the community after. Those are kind of a list of concerns and points that I think should be brought to everyone's attention, and I'll bring it back to the council.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your comments and for being with us tonight. And so I'll just remind everybody again that we're going to have the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Huronia, delegating this evening, and then council will later be debating and voting on this item. So if you want to remain on as you are, you're welcome to do that. Or if you want to exit and watch on YouTube, that's also another option. And our last open forum participant for this evening is Sergio Navarrete. Sergio, if you would turn your video and audio on now. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Hi, everyone. Hello, Mayor, councilors, and staff. Thank you so much for your continued leadership and courage in taking us through this unprecedented time. I know that you know, it's been a challenge for many people. Mostly I'm here to talk about the plans for the development of the park and the beach, Innisfil Beach Park. And I have a 7-year-old who's reviewed the entire plan, and he gives the thumbs up and approves every single element, including you know, the development of the washrooms, the rentals of the facilities, and you know, the mixed use amenities, which I think we can all agree are long overdue. One thing I've been advocating for many years on the economic development committees and to the various councillors and to the mayor is that we need to monetize the thousands of people that use our beach. And they come there and they may spend $25 on parking, but beyond that, they're not spending any money. So for me, it's revenue lost, and I'm in full support of any kind of commercial mixed use development down at the beach. Because I think the current situation is just, I mean, you know, if UNESCO's sites around the world are able to monetize, you know, a well-trafficked beach, I'm sure we can figure out how to do that. So I'm here to tell you that I'm in full support of that plan.
Thank you. Is that everything?
It is for now. Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sergio. And the same applies if we're going to be debating the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan later this evening. So feel free to hang around, or if you want to relax and watch on YouTube, whatever it is you wish, if that's up to you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so that's everything for open forum tonight. Oh, no, sorry. Is there one more? I'm sorry, my apology. Lisa O'Neill to talk about the amendment for resident permit parking only zones. Sorry, Lisa.
No worries at all. I'm not going anywhere. Thanks so much. My video will not turn on. It doesn't bother me if it doesn't bother you, but.
That's fine.
Oh, wait, later. Okay, there we go. Okay, I put this together. I've been speaking for the last couple of days, weeks, really years, but things and conversations on my street have escalated in the light of the last couple of weekends and the pandemic that's going on. First of all, good evening, Council. And I'd like to thank you in advance for taking the time not only to listen, but hopefully expediently help resolve a serious issue that me and my neighbors are having on both Purvis and Ireton Street. For those of you who aren't as familiar, those are the two residential streets, the closest to the 10th Line Beach in Ward 5. The issue, for years, we watch as non-residents use our small beach as the sort of their backup to Innisfil. In the last couple of years, this, my apologies, he doesn't have a mute. In the last couple of years, this has really escalated. Why has it escalated? Well, common sense, I think a number of the reasons are with some of the changes to parking and things at Innisfil Beach, right? It's just common sense. People they don't want to go as far as Wasaga. They don't want to spend money on other beaches. And it's, quite frankly, it's a beautiful beach. Another few reasons are, well, we have porta potties to facilitate these out-of-towners, you know, setting up and staying at our beach all day. Also, on top of that, coming off of the monetary conversation, this beach is it's completely free. They can bring whatever they can. They don't pay a pass. They don't. And then while the parking lot is residents only, and this is the reason for my call in tonight, for years, although other streets around us and other places in town, is my understanding, have no parking or such, Purvis and Ireton have been left for years completely unprotected. And each summer on the weekends, especially Ireton, you know, other summers, I've counted up to 32 cars coming up our street on a road that is not built for parking. When people, especially at the top end, closest to the 10th line on Ireton, park across from that parking lot, they have two wheels on the dirt and their car is pretty much 3/4 of the way in the lane, the driving lane. I cannot tell you how many close calls I have witnessed myself. And as a mom, it scares the heck out of me. Our area, our street in particular, is filled with residents who not only walk their babies and their kids down to the beach and their dogs, but we have tons of elementary and high school kids running around, and summertime, of course, bikes and everything else is always the high point. This, though, believe it or not, doesn't even scare me as much as the hourly close car calls I see coming in and out of my street with actual vehicles. When people come in, read the sign that the parking lot is residents only. They fly down our street to do a U-turn to park up the other side. They try and do three-way turns in that street. It bottlenecks at, emotions, and people get heightened. So you get, if you'd like a clearer picture, come on down on any Saturday or Sunday. So what are we asking for? We would very much like it if we could please get some kind of signage on both streets for either resident only or no parking whatsoever. And we're hoping, and understanding everything takes time and goes through channels, that we could get that done as quick as possible. This upcoming long weekend, honest to God, I've spoken to 4 moms, is scaring the heck out of us. Why? Well, with the pandemic on and the decision to make boat launches and parking lots residents only, but not the beaches, we are the prime location. Just this past weekend, the weekend before was pretty bad too, but just this last weekend, at one point in the day, which wasn't even the highest, on Saturday, there were 17 cars parked up our road. On the Sunday, there were 23. What really concerns us as well is, we're all doing these precautions for the pandemic, and I'm very proud of how our town is done. I think that we are so golden. We're almost out of the gate. What scares me is the majority of the license plate covers the conversations I'm listening to, the one or two people that all the people that are coming here from Woodbridge, from Peel, from York, from Toronto, and quite frankly, they have not done as well as we have. It blows my mind that they're going to stage 2. And they're going to be doing this 1 week before our long weekend, giving them lots of time to mix and mingle before coming and sitting on our beach. This past weekend, our beach was so crowded, regardless of the signage, that the 6-foot social distancing that is being asked for was not physically possible. Myself, my neighbor, 3 other houses I know, after waiting months to be able to go to our beach, did not go to the beach on Saturday or Sunday because we couldn't do it safely because other people were already there. That's pretty much everything. I don't know if the lack of signage is just an oversight, or if people in past years have just never brought it up, or even if perhaps we're on, somewhere farther down on a list of stuff that's being worked on. If it is the latter, and we're just somewhere for a little bit further down the list on something that's already in the works, I and my neighbors would desperately plead that you push us further up, just given the close proximity of the streets to this beach and sort of the bottleneck that we're facing with it right now. That's everything. Again, thank you so much for your time, and we would greatly appreciate any resolution or support you could give us in resolving this.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. And we are dealing with your issue tonight as well. So you will, if you want to stay tuned, you can hear the debate and discussion over our issue, our COVID-19 and our parking, resident parking issue. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
So that takes us out of open forum, and now we will go into approval of the agenda. So do we have any? Oh yes, we do have one amendment to the agenda this evening. Unfortunately, MPP Kanjan had to reschedule for another meeting. So we look forward to hearing from her at a future date. So I need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended. And that would be Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is disclosures of interest. Did anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. I wonder, Ms. O'Neill, if I could ask you just to turn your video off, just because I'm going to count you as a vote when you put your hand up. Thank you so much. Okay, so I heard no disclosures, but if one becomes apparent to you during our discussion, please make it known at that time. Delegations. Our first delegation, our only delegation of the evening, is Mr. Robert Sekoja. Mr. Sekoja is the CEO of Habitat for Humanity Huronia, and he's would invite you now, Mr. Sekoja, to turn on your. There you are. Hello and welcome.
Hello, folks. Good evening. Thank you very much for your time. I do have a presentation. And bear with me, this is the first time doing a PowerPoint in a Zoom meeting.
Not a trouble. I'm sure staff will help provide you with the share the screen function.
There we go.
takes it's a bit of a delay usually.
On my end, it says host has disabled. Oh, there it is. Oh, no, maybe not. What? All right, I might as
Ms.
well.
Toma, have you relinquished share the screen authority?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It should be able to screen share at the moment. Can you try again there?
I will try. Okay, and what would it be under? What window do you want to share? Again, I apologize because it's asking me, I guess, to go to screen. Is that what I should be doing?
Yes, what you do is you look at the screen that you wish to share as to what's the small that are on your own screen. You click on that, and that's what will appear on the screens before us.
My presentation doesn't seem to be up here. It says whiteboard, iPhone, post attendees, and then there's an HR meeting. So I don't know.
I don't know. Are those are your, is that your filing system that you're looking at?
I don't know. I just opened it up and.
So if you click on, if you open your presentation, like open your presentation.
Okay.
So open your presentation, and then you will say share screen, and that's the screen that you select.
Oh, okay. My apologies, folks.
It's all good. We're all learning.
Why is it not coming up?
So maybe what we could do then is you could give your oral submission, and then you could send us a copy of the.
Yeah, for some reason it won't open up out of my files. I apologize.
That's fine. And then for those watching that are very interested in this topic, we can put it up on the website after the council meeting. Is that okay, Deputy Clerk?
Be fine. Thank you.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Scotia.
Oh, did I just do something? Am I still on here?
Yes, you're still here.
Why can't I see it? Oh, there I am. Okay. Again, my apologies for the presentation not being available. My presentation is to the town and to residents with regards to one of our proposed projects that we would like to embark on in Innisfil. Habitat for Humanity is an organization that stands for community involvement, stands for family empowerment, and for a better future. I heard some of the comments earlier. We are not social housing or government housing in any aspect of what we do. In the continuum of housing, you would go from social housing or government housing to rentals, to affordable home ownership, to market value home ownership. What we do with regards to areas decreasing property values, there is no data that would increase that would justify that statement. On the other hand, there is data of areas that we've gone into, and specifically in Barrie, where we've begun the gentrification of the area with our builds. So we can build to suit anywhere. Our families are vetted. They have to be employed. They're assessed yearly. We are the mortgage holder. Our homes that they end up mortgaging from us, if at any point they're looking to gain their equity out of that home, we are the only purchaser. Well, we have right of first refusal, but we always buy our properties back. and those homes become a new home for a new family. We go in there, refurbish it, and get another family vetted to go in there. Our families are strictly vetted. The parameters of our program that differentiate from the fair market value is that we give a 0% mortgage. We also cap the mortgage amount at 25 to 30% of their income. And there is no down payment. They are to do 500 hours of volunteer time in order to take the place of the down payment. Our families are strong, community involved families. They volunteer in different other organizations. Our builds bring in the stats I don't have in front of me, and they were in the presentation, but it's $1 that for every habitat family brings in 4 to the community. And that breakdown is in the presentation. So anybody who wants it, we've actually got the resource that you can reach out to vet that information. Having our families in your neighborhood, you wouldn't know it. If you weren't there to see the house being built with community involvement, volunteers, you'd never know. Oh, there it is. Perfect.
There's your presentation. Wonderful.
That is fantastic. These are numbers that are published across Canada, internationally. Concerns over our families' property values. Crime absolutely has never been a factor for any habitat build. Again, if it's due to the fact that there are concerns over social housing, we are not that. One of the gentlemen addressed something with regards to a scam with Habitat selling homes off. We don't sell homes off. Our model is to keep homes in our hands so that we can have affordable home ownership in our communities perpetually. So it's not a case of us trying to take a home off of somebody 5, 6, 10 years, 15 years down the road and make a profit off it. No, what we would do is we go in there and depending on the state of the house, whether it be refurbished inside or rebuild, but it would go to another habitat family. If we can go to one of the next slides. Yes, here it is. Our program, with the benefits that it reaps for our families and the community, is we actually reduce the reliance on social housing. We get people out of the rental market, and then that frees up social housing to get into the rental market. Reliance on food banks. We have studies that show habitat families, children do better and go further education-wise, again, generationally changing the family dynamic. Improved health. All these things come along with being a habitat homeowner. None of the misnomer of habitat families being given homes, none of them are given homes, they're mortgaged homes. Same as every neighbor on that street would have a mortgage. Different parameters to the mortgage, but it's still a mortgaged home. They have to continually be working. We do not accept anybody who's on social assistance as a family. They have to be working, and we do have a $40,000 minimum household income. Our community involvement is a big part of what we do. When we go through our builds, we have stacks of volunteers come on site from schools, from corporate offices, and from the community. And what that does is it brings a huge networking capability. Most of our trades have found employees just based off of volunteering. Most of our families are recognized in the community. Our homeowners take pride of ownership because they're involved in our build. They spend 500 hours helping build that home. It's a chance and an opportunity that they may not get ever in their life, and they're very thankful. So the concerns about property values, I can't comment on the fact that there is no data we have that it's ever brought down property value. But my last two projects in Barrie have gentrified that area to the point where after our build, both streets started redoing and remodeling their own homes to actually catch up to the standard that we built. And if we can go to the next one, I believe the last one. I'm gonna skip the next one. An important facet of what we're actually gonna be doing in this community is building a passive house certified build. What that does is it gives energy savings to our families. It takes a less environmental toll, but the energy efficiency for our families is also key to affordable home ownership. You know, here you can read that some people spend 17% of their total income on energy to operate their homes. By cutting them to an Energy Star level, which is not even as high as a passive house, you're looking at cutting those costs by 40%, which again allows the families to be in the community, send their kids to soccer, hockey, have a family vacation. It gives them the ability to live a safe and decent life. This also will be our first passive house project. We do build to Energy Star standards, but this is actually going to be our first, and we're excited with regards to building our first passive house certified homes. The last one is a video, I believe, and we cannot play the video. I know you guys are tied up for time. Again, this presentation is available to anybody who would like to reach out to me. These are touching videos. They're definitely, you can hear from our homeowners the pride of ownership and how happy they are to have been given this opportunity. I hope that you guys in Innisfil look at that as strongly as we do as our mission to help our community strengthen, because through home ownership is the only way to strengthen a community. It opens many doors, and I'm hoping that Innisfil looks at us and says they want us a part of their community. That's it. Thank you for your time. Now, I don't know if you want me to field questions now or, oh, sorry, am I on mute?
No, I'm on mute. See,
Okay.
I still haven't got this down pat. Thank you, Mr. Secoja, very much. So yes, I'll open it up for questions or comments from members of council. Councillor Davidson. I mean, Deputy Mayor Davidson, sorry. He's Councillor Davidson at Simcoe County, so I get mixed up.
Okay, I'm very familiar with Habitat for Humanity throughout Toronto and different areas where I've seen it done, and I've seen some just not far when I go into Barrie that were built that have kept very, very well. My one question is that because we have people with disabilities, and because that's a sort of a single-story neighborhood, and I understand that would sort of stick out different from the neighborhood, have you considered building Habitat for Humanity's residences, single story, for people with disabilities, especially movability ones?
We actually have discussed this. There's Winnipeg, Manitoba has just finished or are in the process of just wrapping up a subdivision of homes that are all accessible. So it's kind of the first template with what they've done. We have reached out to see to see how we can incorporate that here. Most of ours, the reason that we've built to the standard that we've built to now without accessibility, we do actually have one in Barrie at Livingston and St. Vincent that we did as for a family that had 2 disabled children, and we built ramps and so forth, but the costs start to outweigh the ability to make it an affordable home ownership. One thing that Winnipeg has taught us is that if you engage the actual manufacturers, that they're willing to play ball with us with regards to costs associated with having an accessible home. but it is something we've definitely discussed and are looking forward to pushing. We haven't discussed even on this project where we're going other than the passive house certification. So
follow up, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand where you're going with it, but I mean, we put it in our development proposals. We have a 30% development that has to be either social housing and a lot of it in Innisfil, we've allowed in-law residences within the house, but they're kind of designing them so maybe in the future it'll be for accessibility issues later. So I think we have to look at that aspect of it and try and tie this development in with that community. And that just may be a new way of thinking it to keep it to single story. And if you can get other developers and sponsors on board with making accessibility housing in Innisfil, I think you've got a win-win there because we're dealing with at the county level as well.
Perfect. I mean, it's not something that's out of the realm for a possibility. Like I said, Winnipeg has proven that we can build and still have affordable costs associated with accessibility. So I'm trying to be transparent and not blow smoke up anybody. I'm telling you, I would love to do it. We've had initial conversations with CARP with regards to if we're going to work on a proposed mid-level residential building where we look at possibly them having the first floor and then Habitat homeowners having the upper 2 floors. The discussions have moved along a lot further. I've only been with Habitat here 5 years, and in the last 2 years, those discussions have come up. We get a lot of requests for accessible homes through our website application.
Thank you very much for your help. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, David, Mr. Davidson.
Councillor Sati.
Thank you, Your Worship. Robert, just a couple questions. When you talk about families, is the Habitat homes also for seniors, or is it just for families?
We have just changed our bylaws actually as of January of this year to include seniors. We had strict bylaw where a family was a family of 3 and it had to include a child under the age of 16. One of the first things I've done as an acting CEO is to recognize that we're in 2020 and family structures are different. And therefore we've been blessed that our board of directors approved it unanimously to have seniors and single parents as families.
Okay, thank you. And then with the Habitat development, is it typically a 2-story, 1.5 single, or does it depend on the location?
I will give you, well, I'll give you a kind of a gamut of where, since I've been here now 5 years, we started out doing single family homes only. Then the cost of land, the cost of building them couldn't sustain affordable home ownership guidelines. So then we went to semis, and then we went from semis to now we're doing a 5 townhouse build in Barrie. We are looking at high density more so now because of the cost of land and the ability to get more families moved in from where we used to go with single family homes. So to answer your question, yeah, we are looking at going into higher density. We've never built a mid-rise here in Simcoe. So again, dependent on the land, that would justify whether or not we can go that route.
And I'm sure one last part of that, Your Worship, sorry, is just that all your developments would be conscientious of blending into the surrounding neighborhoods. I couldn't imagine anything else.
Absolutely. And for anybody who has any concerns, my information is public. Please reach out to me. I would absolutely invite you to take a look at our projects, even our project that we're starting in September up in Barrie. We build to standard. We can go into a subdivision and build to the exact standard. You wouldn't be able to tell a Habitat house from the neighbor's house.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. Just kind of curious, just to help give people a picture idea, what is your vision for this property in terms of how many units are you looking at? How many stories are you looking at? And I have a staff follow-up after that.
Okay. In all honesty, some of our conversations have been we definitely want to maximize the space, cognizant that we do want to have some green space available for the residents there. I think, to be honest, the maximum was 22 to 25 units. And that would be if it was anything, if it was to go to mid-rise. If it's going to go townhouse level, which would be 2-story, we don't build 3-story, we build either single or double-story houses. We're looking at possibly 18 units.
Okay. And I'll be the first person to volunteer help build. As most council knows, I own a passive house. I built my own passive house, so I understand the benefits of it. And those homeowners will reap 90% savings on their energy bills, because that's what I see here. It's a comfortable house, and I think to help residents in the neighborhood feel a little more comfortable, that 2 stories is a little higher than what they're existing finding around there. But I think I think Habitat has a wonderful reputation, and I feel comfortable that you guys will do the neighbors right in that area, and also you'll do your residents proud by being the first multi-level or multi-residential passive house development in Innisfil. And I think it shows a great opportunity for what can be done down at our orbit that we have planning. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. I do agree with you. The energy savings is a big part of what we do. It helps with the envelope of affordable homeownership. This project is going to be the first of Habitat's building a passive house, so we can be proud of that. Our families are the ones that are going to do all of us proud. You will be amazed at the people that come in. They are hardworking, mortgage-owning homeowners that take pride of ownership to the umpteenth degree. I fully can stand behind that the community would not have any issues with regards to Habitat homes or the families that will be moving in.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Sequoia. I have absolutely no doubt in your ability to build the houses. I've seen some of the Habitat houses, and they're all well built. My question really was about how many applications you have, and are they from this area? Are there some people from Innisfil, or do the people come from Toronto or Hamilton, or just from this area only? Is that what, you know?
To answer your question, and shamefully on us, we really haven't done any marketing. We've lived off of the brand. We don't have a waiting list, and it's more so that the public doesn't know exactly what Habitat is. As some of the concerns raised earlier with regards to crime and social housing, we do get the request saying that I hear that you guys give away free houses. That's not the case, or I'd be the first to line up. Part of our vetting process is somebody can only be approved if they are gainfully employed for 2 years locally. Our catch basin for any families coming into the area would be from Bradford up to the 7th line of Oro, across to Borden, down to Alliston. Anybody outside that circle, we'd have to have an extra board meeting to discuss whether or not. Now, if they were moving in because of work, so forth, and they fit within the parameters, we could make that exception. 99% of our homeowners are local, and the other 1% actually came from Rama.
Just to follow up, Your Worship. So if you have no applications, you don't build on spec, or you do build on spec, and because you need volunteers?
Yes. Well, the applications, as soon as we start marketing what we're doing here, I have no question that we're going to have an influx of applicants coming in. we build our homes almost to a, and I don't like to use the word cookie cutter because it seems that that would always dictate what a habitat house is. But there are some things that we, as a standard, always 3 bedrooms, bathroom and a half. We've just started using garages. So we build off spec for that. So we build it. If there's a family of 5 or 6 and they need more bedrooms, we would look at finishing the basement for more space. But it's whatever we have built, that's where they would be able to move into.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for your presentation. Unfortunately for me, my answers have been answered, or my questions have been answered. I did have one thing though, that if it's a 2-story building, where would the parking, like, would it be underground parking, or would it be sort of garages in the building, or how would that work?
To be completely honest, we haven't even begun the stage of planning what kind of units we're going to be going in there.
Okay.
With regards to the, whether it be, it's something that we would work together with the town and the planning department to see what we can fit. Most of our current developments have driveways into garages.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
One question I do have, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I like the fact that there's a planning process once the land is given or donated that you can proceed. My question is, how much public input is involved in the design of the structures you build? Are there open houses? Do people have a say, or at least an understanding of what's going to occur? Because I think the biggest issue many people may have is the unknown. They don't know what they're getting. They don't know, and in their mind, it may be better or worse than it could possibly be. So is there any feedback? Is there any way that you could have, for lack of a better term, open houses with people that you could inform them of how this is going to proceed, timeline, that sort of idea?
Councillor Fowler, sorry, I'm going to let Mr. Kane from our Director of Growth to answer that, because it's more to do with our process than Mr. Sekoda's process.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Fowler. Yes, we've had various projects in the past that have had different levels of input at different stages. So, not to speak on behalf of Habitat, but there are opportunities to have details before we go to public meetings and open houses that exceed obviously Plan Act requirements to help give that certainty to the process. So, I think in this case, where there is a specific design or concepts in play, certainly we would try to make that part of any open house and any council public meeting to help guide those discussions and comments as they come in and as council starts to debate some of the details with the applications.
Thank you. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Sekoja. Did you want to respond as well?
Well, when it came to the portion of his question with regards to the design, obviously we'd be working with the town to get the design elements down. When it came to the actual architectural design of it, we do that in-house. And what we do is, once we do have something in stone of what we are going to be going to build, we actually go into the community surrounding our development to speak to the residents, to let them know that this is something that that we were thinking of doing. We take the feedback. But one thing I've said to my staff, as always, is that we have to change with the times. And if there's a requirement with regards to a certain neighborhood that wants to have more open houses or more dealings, I'm very open to all of that.
Wonderful. Seeing no other hands, I want to thank you very much for your presentation. It was very informative. and to let those who are watching know that that item is on our agenda later on under item C.3, I believe. So we'll be having more debate then and possibly more questions to staff at that time. So thank you again for being with us this evening. I learned something about I didn't know, and that's always good. So thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder, please, for the presentation to be received. Councillor Payne and Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? And that is carried. So next is County Council, Municipal Association, Conservation Authority updates. Any updates from County Council, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. I think just the biggest thing we dealt with yesterday was waste. So there's some memos that are going out to the public today and tomorrow on how the county's going to handle waste going into 2021. You'll be receiving 3 bins. So read up on it, and hopefully we can do our part to leave a better tomorrow for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. And the only other thing I can recall that was important for us is signing an MOU with MTO for work on the interchange at IBR and the 400. So that'll be in the future, and looking forward to that. Any other updates from any committees that you're all busy with? Conservation Authority, seeing none. I'll go to Councillor Fowler. You had an update on the pitch-in committee, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. As the chair of the Innisfil Pitch-in Committee, I would like to share with everybody the following update. This year, due to COVID-19, we in the Pitch-in Committee chose to adhere to provincial and town regulations, which resulted in the unfortunate cancellation of Innisfil's annual Pitch-in Day on May 9th. We on the committee are very proud of our remarkable community members who strive to improve and maintain the natural beauty of Innisfil under any and all circumstances. Although we were unable to host our annual Pitch-in Day, the committee still felt it necessary to promote nominations for Innisfil's Debbie Mills Civic Pride Award. This prestigious award was established in 2013 to recognize the dedication of outstanding individuals in our community who have taken it upon themselves to clean up all year round. Now, normally, this award has been presented to our recipient at a council meeting. However, due to the current social distancing requirements of COVID-19, the committee opted to present this award virtually. That being said, the committee is still incredibly honored to announce that the recipient of the 2020 Debbie Mills Civic Pride Award is Miss Charlotte DiBiase. Miss DiBiase is currently watching via the town's YouTube channel this evening and has been presented with a certificate of appreciation and a Starbucks e-gift card for her continued effort in cleaning up the community. Ms. DiBiase has created a short video demonstrating her efforts in tandem with a detailed log of her accomplishments. They have been provided to council and to staff so they may see her incredible thoroughness in her work. This eye-opening and inspirational video will be shared on the town's website under /pitch-in. Again, congratulations and thank you, Charlotte. But the Pitch-in Committee is not done yet. We would also like to take a moment to recognize Miss Terry Asselstein, who we fondly refer to as the Road Warrior. Miss Asselstein has been diligently cleaning the 5th and 6th lines, 20th Side Road, and County Road 4 between 5th and 6th line. Many residents know Miss Asselstein as they have seen her on more than one occasion patrolling her chosen routes. The Pitch-in Committee felt it was appropriate to present Ms. Asselstein with a certificate of appreciation and a Tim Hortons e-gift card as well for her continued efforts in keeping her community clean. Thank you, Terry. Your work has obviously inspired many others. We on the Pitch-in Committee, our Vice Chair Sue Bennett and Kel Lynn Chernobyl, Al Gilchrist, Robert Penny, and Rick Fearman, along with a volunteer, Ms. Deborah McGrath, wish to extend our appreciation to these individuals. I personally would like to add a name to this list. Ms. Creamer, Kim Creamer, your efforts are always greatly appreciated. If all goes well, pending provincial and municipal regulations and guidelines, the committee may consider hosting a small community cleanup event or 3, depending on how things go in Innisfil, that fall in line with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks Provincial Day of Action on Litter during the Waste Reduction Week of October 19th to 25th, 2020. I have faith that many of our road warriors would be eager to make a difference once more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler, and thank you very much to our Pitchin Debbie Mills Award winner. So next, Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to mention that Charlotte DiBiase was nominated by somebody in my ward who observed her efforts and reached out to me to say that, you know, Innisfil should really recognize the efforts of people like Charlotte, especially during these trying times. I let him know about the Debbie Mills Award for Civic Pride, and clearly we're both very happy that Charlotte has won for that. Hearing tonight that there may be in October, I was going to wonder with the cancellation whether I would retain the title of the Golden Broom Champion and whether that would make me 4 to 5 years, but clearly I have to wait till October now. So anyways, congratulations, Charlotte.
Yes, the Golden Broom is definitely the prize that we all strive for. So thank you for that, Councillor. So now we'll go into our items in our consent agenda. And for those of you who are new to council, all of the reports and the staff recommendations are listed on the agenda. If council is happy with the recommendation that staff have recommended, then it won't be pulled. If we wish to debate further, ask questions, or amend any recommendation, we'll pull that and go to committee of the whole. So if the item that you are interested in is not pulled, then you can assume that the recommendation will be approved as printed. So let's start with A2, the special council, sorry, A1, the council minutes from May 27th. A2, the special council meeting minutes from June 11th. A3, the special council meeting minutes from June 17th. B1, the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee report. B2, the Pitchin Committee report dated June the 10th. B3, the Helping Hand Program Committee report dated June 10th. Councillor Fowler.
Sorry, I just have a comment I'd like to make quickly. We can move on. While we were discussing the final aspects of the Helping Hands Committee, we had a late donation from the Lioness. It was a unanimous decision, and I just wanted to extend the thanks on behalf of the committee to the Lioness for their last-minute $500 donation. It's amazing. They've just no hesitation. They stepped right up to help the community as they always do. So thank you, ladies.
And I want to thank everybody who had agreed to participate in this program. And of course, if you want to continue, you're more than welcome, but we're not shaming anybody. We're not twisting arms. And we just want to thank everybody, including all members of council and our CAO and many other staff members who contributed to help make this fund happen for our residents. Next is C1, the Alcona parking study and the Innisfil Beach Park master plan. Nobody wants to pull that? Oh. Okay, Deputy Mayor Davidson. Next is C2, the Prudent Investor Enabling Bylaw. C3, the land donation for affordable passive house project. Deputy Mayor Davidson. C4, the Friday Harbor payment deferral request. C5, the shared services exploration and allocation of modernization grant funding. Councillor Sati's pulling that. C6, the MOU with the town of Innisfil and the county of Simcoe for an addition for a new sidewalk on the 4th line. I know that Reverend Eagle will be doing his happy dance. He delegated on this item probably 5 to 10 years ago. So he'll be happy to see that. C7, the Sleeping Lion Water Balance Offsetting Agreement. Councillor Waters. C8, Supporting Diversity and Inclusion. Nobody wants to pull. I'm going to pull that just because I think we need. Sorry, I hit my space bar. Did you hear what I had to say? I said, okay, I said that I would pull that if no one else wanted to, because, and that would be the item supporting diversity and inclusion. Okay. C9 is the resident permit parking only zones. Councillor Fowler is pulling that. C10, the permitting dogs in Innisfil Beach Park at all times during the COVID emergency. Dog days of summer, we're going to have dogs at Innisfil Beach Park. All right, then we go to the reports for information. Were any of those things people wanted to bring forward or ask questions, or seeing none? Bylaws. Sorry. Go ahead.
Just when it comes up, I'd like to get just some questions regarding D2, if possible, please.
Okay, so now's your time.
Okay, when it comes to D2, these the community roundtable interim report. Just one moment here, I'll pull up my notes. What I've encountered with this is just a question I have. It's something I've noticed, a perpetual thing. When it comes to these roundtables and events where we have people speaking on the betterment of our community, many of these speakers come from outside our borders of Innisfil, and I'm just a little curious as to the reasoning behind. If you take a look at the recent roundtable, Tamarack Institute is Waterloo-based. Last year we had events at Georgian Down, and we had 2 speakers from Barrie, 1 from Toronto. I'm just wondering why we're looking outside our borders for the people within our borders. Why are we not looking to see those that are succeeding inside our community, as opposed so they can inspire others in our community to rise to the occasion? I see a lot of it. I understand that the assistance is required and the guidance is there, but do we not have people inside the borders of our town that we look to lift up to assist? Does that make sense?
I'll ask, is Jen Ray on the call? Hi, Ms. Ray.
Through your worship to Councillor Fowler, Tamarack Institute is a renowned community engagement institute. So we hired them for their facilitation services, but the actual conversations were led by community members that joined the roundtable sessions. So we are actively looking for the input of the community and the people who know best what the issues and challenges that Innisfil is facing, especially due to COVID-19. We're also hoping that these community members will provide us with solutions to move forward, to work together, to fill gaps. So we are very much actively looking for community input and community support to move forward. But the decision to use Tamarack was just based on their expertise in this field and their ability to facilitate.
Thank you. Is that good, Councillor?
That is perfectly fine. Thank you for the answer. Appreciate it.
Next, bylaws. There are no bylaws to this evening. There's no correspondence for action. Under correspondence for information, we have 3 items. Anybody want to speak to any of those items? Seeing none, next is we'll go to the consent list, and the items that we're pulling are listed on there, and we would require a motion. So a mover and a seconder to do the consent list, Councillor Waters and Councillor Ices. All those in favor? That is carried. And resolved to committee of the whole. So I need a mover and a seconder to do that. Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Nicol, all those in favor? That's carried. And we'll move to our first item, which is C1, I believe, and it was Deputy Mayor Davidson who pulled that. And this is the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan and Alcona Parking Study.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Sati and I were chatting this afternoon. I think I need a seconder to take a look at this with me, do I not?
Actually, the motion to defer was Councillor Orsatti's. So if you wanted to second that, Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
My question would be, though, did you want to have some discussion prior to, because a motion to, if you're going to defer, then that would curtail any discussion at this point?
Yeah. I think I'll wait to hear what Councillor Sati has to say, and then I'll move forward, okay?
Anyone else want to speak to this one? Councillor Sati, did you?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I'm just quickly grabbing my notes here. Yes, I thought that council should have a full discussion on this item this evening, but there was some items. The reason that I was going to recommend a deferral later of the vote was that I feel that residents deserve the opportunity to speak in an open forum. I know we had some tonight, but this park master plan, the parking study, all the attachments are a lot of reading and documents that were placed on the agenda. I don't feel that residents had an opportunity to read the updated park master plan and all the attachments that were not available before. So what I'll be recommending to council after we have a discussion on some of these items is to defer the vote to allow residents to have that opportunity. And also, I'm just looking here, some of the items that I wanted to look at with staff and to discuss tonight is that the park master plan or the parking study I had a discussion with staff, and they had informed me that, because I had a lot of concerns with the parking study, the using residential streets to move parking onto, to look at the additional spaces required in the downtown commercial corridor and how it related. But planning has advised that that this is to be used as a guideline for future study, and as they get into each component, these are guideline steps to be used. So that helped me a lot with that, because I thought we could spend the whole night just on the parking study. The one other thing that was a concern for me is deferring this item. It will be a discussion with staff is how this is best handled, because the overlapping part of the park master plan is the interim control bylaw and the houses on lakelands and how they intermingle. So we'll be looking at the chicken and egg, which comes first, which one do we vote on and how far out do we move this? I understand that staffing, planning I respect, and I do not want to recognize the amount of time, 6 years into studying this park, and the amount of time that staff have put into this and the dedication and the hard work. So I do not want to discredit that, but I want to recognize that. But I think that we have to get this park right. And I think, part of the foundation concrete block is getting the parking. And also my concern, and one of the things that I had was that in this report, recommendation number 9 under attachment 1 is asking council to adopt the projects that are outlined in the park draft master plan, to adopt the projects for the 20-year plan. So my concern is that I'll also be looking at is If we adopt all those, there's over 16 projects in here. So then is that mean that council is giving the go-ahead green light on all over 16 projects? What I would feel more comfortable with is looking at some type of, I don't know whether we're going to need an amendment to this, which I know that staff is probably cringing. I'm probably giving them a lot of headaches, but I really feel we need to get this right. I feel that if there is more of a flexibility with these projects, that when they go to budget, there's a flexibility at that time to discuss each one, to determine, does it still fit? Is it the right location when it goes to budget? And I don't know how to do this because I know that staff are concerned right now with the voting on this and how long the delay is, because they have to plan for their budget. So some input from staff would be helpful, our CAO or for our finance department. I see you nodding. You're muted.
Your worship, you're on, you're mute there.
Thank you. Mr. Parkin?
Thank you, worship. Just wanted to clarify procedurally here. Did we have a mover and seconder for the original motion? Okay.
Yes, Councillor Sati and seconded by Deputy Mayor Davidson. Oh, not the original motion. Sorry, you're right. That was for the deferral motion. So we need a mover and a seconder for this motion. Councillor Nicol and Councillor Waters for this motion.
And if there is, appetite to defer, you could bring that up sooner or later if I'm not sure how much discussion you want to get into, but if you do decide to put that forward, it would help staff to provide direction on what you want them to do during that deferral time.
And I appreciate that very much, Mr. Clerk. My issue is my understanding is if we do the motion to defer, then all of the comments have to be on the motion to defer and not on the report as presented. And I thought I would like, if possible, to have a bit of conversation and discussion about what it is exactly that you want to defer it for. So, and then maybe go on to the deferral motion and then give just direction to staff on, what you're deferring it for. You wanting it changed, or what is it or are you just deferring it for more chance for input from the public? Okay.
Thank you, Worship. The request for that I feel for deferral is that residents, the main reason is that residents have not had an opportunity to read the 180 pages in a week to be able to speak in a public open forum. And I feel that they deserve that. If this was in our council chambers, they would be coming up, signing in as they walk through the door and coming up to the podiums to give their input. And I feel, it could be a long night of 1 hour of people doing that, but they still deserve that opportunity.
Thank you. And I think that's why back in February, that the draft was introduced to everyone. So to say, here it is, and dig in and make your comments, because it's going to come back to council in a couple of months. But understand people have been busy right now, maybe other things on their mind. Mr. Kane?
Yes, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Sati, just regarding the procedural question about the recommendation number 9 that's in the actual park master plan. My understanding is, and I'll look to Galen and to Mary for further detail if required, but my understanding was that recommendation isn't a formal council recommendation at this point in time. It's looking for adoption of the projects in principle that are outlined in that master plan, simply to provide guidance for the preparation of the capital budgets associated with those projects. So, staff is looking for that initial direction from council, based on what is in the Parks Master Plan and what's debated tonight, just so that we can prepare a better budget. and start looking at those projects specifically, knowing full well there'll be a full debate about each and every one of those projects as part of the council budgeting process.
Thank you. Ms. Nordstrom, did you have a comment? You're on mute, Mary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, through Your Worship, to the inquiries and further to what Mr. Kane just shared is the park plan also provides for a 5-year, every 5 years, the park plan be reviewed. So in addition to a 2-year budget cycle, we'd be looking to implement portions of this plan, the master plan, and it is a guiding document. It is also to be looked at every 5 years as well in terms of its currency.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that's really important to understand that this is like a guiding document, but it's not a written in stone document. I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, I'd never heard of pickleball. And now it is such a rage. Everybody wants pickleball. So there'll be something that people will want years from now that won't be in this. And we have to be agile and kind of move with the times. But I have a speaking list going here, and it's Councillor Nicol, then the Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Waters.
Your Worship, I can appreciate Councillor Sati's wish to possibly defer this to give people a little bit more time. To me, I feel like we've been seeing part of this document, if not all of it, over the past 2 terms of council. As you said, the draft itself has been out for almost 5 months now as well too. So it's definitely something that we've all had available to us. I don't think there's anything time sensitive in the document, so I don't have a concern in deferring it to the next meeting or something to give the residents a little more chance to I guess absorb what's in there. But I think that the key is what you said and Ms. Nordstrom said is this is a guiding document. This is not etched in stone. It's just to give us a direction for become a viable and a much more usable destination. So I have no concern one way or another if this continues this way or if it does go to a motion to defer. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm did either Mr. Kane or Ms. Nordstrom want to deal with the question that Councillor Sati had about the chicken and egg scenario with the interim control bylaw and how approving this prior to considering the rezone and how that would work?
Yes, Your Worship, I can start, and Ms. Nordstrom can certainly assist as well. You know, from our point of view, you know, there's a couple reasons why the park master plan is being looked at sooner rather than later, or needs to be looked at or considered by council sooner rather than later. The first one, which we've spoken about, is the budget and the capital budget planning process associated with that. So, you know, staff are actively preparing that budget now, and certainly guidance sooner rather than later would help in that regard. The other key milestone or the other key juncture that the master plan would help us with is the interim control bylaw along Innisfil Beach Road and Lakelands. Obviously, you know, knowing what was happening, what the vision is for the park informs, you know, what that final bylaw looks like and what council would be considering as part of that rezoning process. So it is a bit of a chicken and the egg, you know, if, you know, does the rezoning come before the park master plan, or does the park master plan come before the rezoning? And in staff's view, and I'll defer to our planning manager, but in staff's view, there is some merit in knowing what's happening across the road, essentially, with respect to the park master plan, and then being able to tailor, you know, a specific rezoning proposal for those for that neighborhood opposite. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mary or Galen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to add, Mary?
Yep, through Your Worship. Yes, so the 2 documents really work in tandem, and but just a reminder that the master plan is that guiding document, and it's not it's not a zoning bylaw, and it doesn't implement and regulate the uses along Innisfil Beach Road or the lands that are affected by the ICB. It is a vision, and that any zoning would be following that process we discussed at last week's planning meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, or did you have anything else, Councillor Sati, right now? We can come around again.
Thank you. Sorry, was that me or for the Deputy Mayor?
Well, we'll go to the deputy. We'll come back to you. How's that? Because I've got a list going here. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I'm looking at page 7 of 8 of 11 in here, and this Innisfil Beach Master Park Plan separately was written prior to COVID-19. Since COVID-19, we've seen this whole park do a transition from being for tourism now to being private. We have a lot of things, I think, to look at coming out of COVID-19 with regarding the park. And our CEO, and you were quite close with Dr. Gardner on a regular basis discussing COVID-19. His exact words that COVID-19 could be around for a couple of years. He quoted that a few weeks ago. If we throw COVID-19 into our planning with the parks, what is the first thing we shut down when COVID-19 started? All municipal buildings, all parks were shut down immediately. If we go into this grand plan with the master plan for the park, the revenue that the taxpayers' money that we're spending to build it, the capital projects are in the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions over the next 20 years or whatever. These buildings need to be maintained and staffed and looked after. If we have another pandemic in the future, which they say is coming, all these buildings will be shut down, empty for months, if not years, costing the ratepayers a heck of a lot of money just to carry it forward. I think we have to put a pandemic plan into our park master plan to see how it would impact our residents down the road. And with this pandemic that we've opened the park, there's a lot of questions from people saying, keep it private, keep it as it is. And I know it generates around $334,000 a year approximately. But when we look at the cost of maintaining the park when it is open to the public, that's just revenue coming in. It's not a separation of revenue and cost and maintenance that goes in there. That's my first part of it. My second part of it is when I read page 7 and 8 here and I look at it, when we pass this master park plan tonight and the Alcona parking study, now let's go to the Alcona parking study. This Saturday alone, you turned away 900 cars in one day or over 2 days. I can imagine the people who lived on that street weren't impressed seeing 1,800 cars actually go in circles. So I have a bit of a concern combining these two together. And if you go to page 7, it says the downtown commercial area extension. So it seems like we're throwing all three things in there at once. And when I go back to the master plan where we're going to remove the boat launch and put a dock in for 100 people, and when I look 100 boats for coming into Innisfil, I looked at it and said, well, these docks are going to be right in front of that coffee shop that Alex Waters wants to go and look out at the lake at. So it looks like we will be probably, what's the word? We did it at county, expropriating the land here. So, and these land values of these 4 or 5 houses are in the millions of dollars. We'd have to come up with a good 10 or 15 million just to buy those houses to do that dock program. So my deferral is that because we're combining 3 things here, Alcona master plan, Beach Park master plan, Alcona parking study, and the downtown commercial area extension, I really do feel the residents really, I know they've had a lot of time to look at it, but with COVID-19 in the last 4 months, people's minds are somewhere else. It's called survival at the moment. And I'm also concerned about capital expenditures in the next 2 years going into a great recession, that any capital expenditures that come from ratepayers' dollars should actually be frozen at this time. That's another debate for another day. So with Councillor Sati, I'd like to hear what she has to say next, and then that's my reason for supporting the deferral. Thank you.
Thank you. And for anybody watching, this is a 20-year guiding document. Nobody's expropriating anything. So just, I don't want to put that out there because that's not what's going on. And also I wanted to ask either Mary or Tim if they want to comment, or Galen, if they want to comment on the COVID aspect of the plan.
Yes, Your Worship. If you don't mind, I can speak to the COVID part just because I've been party to a lot of those discussions on the COVID team. You know, there's no question there's been an impact on the park, and through the leadership of council and staff, we've been actively monitoring that situation and adapting the park use to meet the current demands and needs of the community while still protecting public health. That's certainly been important. And I think that shows to, you know, the ability to amend our capital projects and our operating budgets moving forward. So, you know, if this pandemic and the impacts of it are longer term, certainly we're going to have those debates coming up in that budget deliberation process, if not this cycle, then the next cycle. At the same time, you know, an important part of the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan is making better use of the entire 85 acres. So, you know, we know and we see the impacts of concentrations of people more than ever these days. You know, having a park master plan that, you know, incrementally starts, you know, implementing capital projects, you know, subject to council's approval, you know, does allow that park to become, you know, better utilized and be an asset during these times of challenge when people really need the parks more than ever.
Thank you. Next I had Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make a few comments. First of all, I want to thank the staff for putting together, I think, a well-rounded master plan for the park. And I think they did the process properly. They took a lot of residents' interests. We've had lots of engagement with residents. So I think the park does reflect what the residents wanted. If you take a look at the surveys, a lot of those things that they wanted are built into the park. Yes, there might be more than we expected, but Councillor Sati and I did have a meeting with them, I think back, it was pre-COVID, I think, and our concern over the density of activities in the park. They did listen to us. They took out, they didn't take out a few others, but they consolidated a few of those activities in another part, increased the green space because they did listen to us. They listened to the residents. They did listen to Councillor Sati and myself on that. So I just want to reflect that the staff have done, I think, a really good job at trying to get a good feel in terms of what the residents wanted here. 16 projects sounds like a lot of projects. That's 16 projects over 20 years. So that's less than a project a year on the site. And again, it's only a guideline. At any time, we can choose not to go ahead or review it. And if anyone knows how, you know, that you can lose an item at budget, it's me. I remember Councillor Nickel, you know, arguing over the chargers on the municipal property, and I fought for that one dearly, and I lost it, so it was pulled out of the budget. So anytime any of these projects are going to go through that, because we go through a budget process every 2 years, and at that time it also reflects our changing values, our changing needs, and all that kind of stuff. So I look at the vision as a guiding document that's flexible enough to allow the changes to happen. However, if the majority of council want to defer it until August, I can live with that. But at the same time, I don't think that much is going to change in it because it's only a guiding document. It's not an absolute. So I just wanted to make those things known. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have most of this master plan, you know, I agree with because it's been an ongoing thing for I don't know how many years. I think we looked at this 20 years ago and it's been an ongoing thing ever since. And we finally came up with a plan. My problem is I agree with a lot of the stuff that's going to happen in the park, but I don't agree with some of the other stuff like the rezoning, the parking. I feel like it's more than a master plan. I think it's like 3 master plans. And I agree with a lot with what Alex said and what the deputy mayor said. If I had a vote on this today, I would say, no, I can't vote on it because I don't agree with all of it. I think that we should separate it and maybe debate all 3 parts because yes, we're doing what the public wants in the park, but we had a lot of opposition on the rezoning. We got all kinds of letters and emails and deputations on it. Same with the parking. It's the chicken and egg thing that Donna's talking about. So I think we should clear them up. If I was to vote just on the park, yeah, I agree with it. They did a great job and it's everything people want, but I can't agree with all of it. And that's where I have the problem. So I would vote for deferral.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel. So does somebody want to speak to, let's say, let's just say that the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan was approved tonight, and the rezone was altered somehow, what impact would that have? Like, how would that work? And I had this conversation earlier today with Mr. Pierce. So I'm going to ask Mr. Pierce to answer that question.
Well, thank you, Mayor. As was discussed earlier, there would be the option of reordering the approvals. That option would remain with the deferral. The other option would be looking at providing a modified resolution of council on an approval for the park master plan. Something to the end of, directing staff to return to the plan and make amendments to the plan, make modifications to the plan on August 12th following a decision. And we're in a good situation with the master plan. It's been brought up several times. It is a guideline. It's not a zoning bylaw, which is much harder to amend and update. It would be a matter of just receiving direction from council, and we could update it to remove portions, modify sections regarding the ICB lands. And based on my discussions with council and residents, that could take many forms, and we'll have all of those options on August 12th when we come back with a recommendation report. That flexibility is there.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have one particular question. When I went over the report, I agree that it is a lot to take in one time. It is an amalgamation of numerous reports with so many moving pieces that it's mind-boggling. I can only imagine the amount of work that went into it, and I am impressed by the efficiency of the town staff for what they've accomplished. But like, there's things that kind of stick out that, if everybody got 2 or 3 points, we'd be here all night discussing what everybody's issues are. One that stands out to me, which I see no clarification on, is in the residential area, or I believe it's the residential portion of the park. It's the neighborhood area. I'm sorry. What they're referring to, if you take a look at the map, they've wiped out the fire station. Now, there's no mention of where it's going to go, what's going to be replaced. You're replacing it with a BMX pump track, a skateboard park. Now, with 85 acres, maybe it's just me, but I'd like to keep our essential services in one of the most densely populated areas of Innisfil for the safety, instead of having a skateboard park. I could see moving it to a different place or a different portion of town, perhaps. Big Bay Point might need it, Stroud might need it. There's other portions of town that could use these features for our youth. And to me, taking out a fire station where, and let's be honest, minutes can cost a person a life in these sort of scenarios. I don't see the logic behind it. So I mean, like, when we go through these motions, like, there's a lot to be cleared up, and the more we put on the table, the harder it becomes to delegate and differentiate between each piece. So I think that if we broke it down into smaller bite sizes, people would be able to digest it better, understand better, and have less resistance as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. I just wanted to clarify that the BMX track is proposed in the north part of the park. It continues to be proposed in the north part of the park. And although the IMU development concept on top of the fire station would disrupt the current fire station, there are guidelines in place in Appendix A that outline the uses of that building, of which replacement or relocation of that fire station to elsewhere in the community would be considered at that time. And that would be as part of numerous other community facilities that could fit into that IMU development concept. So I just wanted to clarify that the BMX park wasn't replacing the fire station. The fire station could be built within that development itself.
Next, I had Councillor Ices.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I definitely agree with a lot of things that have been said so far as grounds for deferring this motion. But one thing that I wanted to have considered if this motion does pass and we get to discuss the master plan in the future is this unique opportunity that we've been given to examine, how the park operates when it is residents only. This is an opportunity that I think really should have some input into the discussion, because I know that is there is a segment of our residents that want it to be that way. And so what does it cost? What does it cost us when we don't have the parking revenue? We're still cutting the grass. What are the things that we learned from this? And I definitely wouldn't want to pass up on analyzing this unique spot we're in, and maybe it would guide us in some of our discussions here. I too also wanted to commend staff for the amount of work that went into this. I know it's been years and years. Unfortunately, I got to agree with some of the other councillors that it seems like we've thrown everything into a pot, and no matter how we come out of this, there's going to be it's hard to make a decision on all these things together. It was very helpful last week to have the public meeting about the interim control bylaw, and out of that meeting we were asked to put some economic analysis behind what we're doing here, and I think that's what's really missing in this. For this plan to be successful, we need to be able to partner with private citizens, with businesses who can join us with this vision of running a restaurant, of running a store, of running a food truck, all these things that we as a town aren't in the business of running. And I don't see a lot in this report that where that analysis has taken place. We see, it was pointed out last week by residents very clearly that our Innisfil Beach Road west of the 25th side road, it's not flourishing with retail, and there's lots of space for it, and it's been years and years and years. And we still have when we have private properties that with a sign on it that says a business is coming and it doesn't come, like we should be asking ourselves questions as to why the economics aren't working there. And I think that applies here as well, because in the report it's a very aggressive report. It's utopian in a way, and I would have a hard time agreeing with all of it, because I think it is a little bit too ambitious. So that would be my comments, and I think it's a good. The proper thing is to defer this so we can let the residents in, have more time. With COVID, there is no urgency on this, and those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Inwood and then Mr. Kane to respond.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to Councillor IC's point, and I think a couple of members of council have talked about the current situation with Innisfil Beach Park being parking and boat launch access for resident only. I want to reiterate that it is a temporary measure, and that late last year and again early this year, the Innisfil Beach Park Ad Hoc Committee spent some significant time discussing
Thank you, Mr. King.
Thank you, Worship, and through to Councillor Alexis. There seems to be a recurring theme in the comments, and I'm thankful for the opportunity just to address that. The one of the the overwhelmingness, if that's a word, of having those three separate matters embedded in this report, and that it wasn't trying to bamboozle anyone by any stretch of the imagination. Quite the opposite. It was trying to integrate and show the relationship between those complex topics of the park, of Innisfil Beach Road and Lakelands, and the wider Innisfil Beach Road. So, there is a confluence of events here that we're trying to, address comprehensively in a report, and sometimes, that may be taken as just trying to put too much in one report. But rest assured, we were trying to present this to council in an integrated nature. And with respect to deferring it, depending on what date is chosen, we have made commitments to council and to the public to come back with the zoning bylaw for August 12th. So, there's a chance that both this and the potential rezoning for Lakelands and Innisfil Beach Road could come together on the same night, which would be, perhaps more confusing. So it would be impacts on other important projects with the town. In terms of the economic analysis, this is something that we heard, and there's been a number of meetings internally with staff to address this issue. This was probably the key issue that we heard in last week's public meeting, and that is why that we have already begun engaging internally and externally to answer those questions for council, and that will form part of that ICB meeting coming up August 12th. And then finally, with respect to the amount of information and the amount of changes since February, I believe there's certainly been a reformatting exercise and some tweaks to that plan, that's different than what you're seeing in February. And perhaps Mr. Pierce could quickly just summarize what those changes are that might help council understand what's changed since February before we add any more time to the process.
Thank you.
Yep, to clarify on that question, the first changes came about through discussions with the ward councillors. That was, I believe it was a publicly debated issue, which was there was quite a bit of density of quite a few activities in the neighborhood park area, in the neighborhood area in the north. So the decision was, the change was made to shift what is essentially a community space down towards the gateway corridor. And that change was substantiated by the benefits to decreased activity in the north part, more opportunity for green space, and consistency with our community hub policies in the official plan. That change was the largest change that happened over the last 4 months. Other changes would include feedback from internal staff stakeholders, feedback from various departments on the plan, which was circulated. Other changes include hundreds of essentially grammatical and technical amendments. I would estimate that 90% of the plan remains effectively the same as what was put forward in February, with the big exception being that shift of the community space down to the gateway area, and increase of forested areas.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. The biggest change that I've noticed, maybe not since February, but since the last summer in the park when we did that big open house, is at that time it showed buildings on both sides of Innisfil Beach Road. So on the park side of Innisfil Beach Road, all the way down to the lake, there was kind of mixed use on both sides, was there not? And there was big pushback from residents on that, and that has been removed. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And councillors may remember in the previous staff report, it was DSR 05120. There was a fairly lengthy overview of the impact of the 2019 consultation. So scaling back that commercial concept was the single most significant change to the park, because we did hear a lot of opposition to that. It was also, I would also add that that concept transformed from a primarily commercial focus to a community hub focus.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Next on my list is Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate the work that's gone into this. I mean, I've read it and heard from so many constituents in the last while. So I do appreciate the work you've done. One part that I found kind of humorous, and I think Lynn Dolan, you were there several years ago when South Simcoe Streams Network, we planted several hundred trees along the east side of Bon Secure Park that goes, a river creek that goes through the park. We planted several hundred trees where the toboggan hill is down at the very bottom to the east. We also planted several shrubs and trees to the east of the beach and on the beach on the northeast end of it. None of those trees exist anymore. All those shrubs have been ripped out by visitors or residents using ATVs in the winter time to get down to the ice. The trees at the bottom of the toboggan hill, they don't exist anymore. So I saw it in the planning here that you plan to, you know, sort of put our shores sort of in there where we put indigenous species and shrubs back into our beach area. Well, that's a waste of money because they won't last 2 years. People see a tree on the beach, they just knock it over. But I also want the people to know that we have two other huge parcels of land. I think council is very aware. We have a huge parcel of land where the old gravel pit is next to Friday Harbor that the town owns. I think it's 23 acres. So we seem to be condensing everything into one park when this park was supposed to be built years ago. We could maybe look at spreading some of it out so there is more green space at Innisfil Beach Park. We've also bought 100 acres on the 10th line that people maybe aren't aware of, and that's in a 10-year plan to start also building out. So why are we condensing everything into one park in the next 20 years? So I think the people in that area need to know there's two of the huge parcels of land where we can have diamonds and BMX parks and whatever else and spread it out so the traffic isn't so congested for that one little area from the 25th to the water. So other than that, I mean, what council decides is fine. I know on the August meeting, it might be a little heavy, but if I think staff could come together with sort of some separation between the parking study and the master plan, so we can let the ratepayers know that we're not sort of shoving this through really fast without a lot of thought, because there's two major issues: parking, traffic, and then the park. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that having the plans integrated is really important. And if we didn't do this, then we'd be criticized of, you know, them not working well together. So I think that's an important aspect of it too, is that, you know, we want to know that staff are layering these things so that they meld together. And I think that's why it's important that we are receiving them together and understand that staff have done that work. I had Councillor Waters next.
Thank you, Your Worship. In my previous life, when I was worked at the Courtright Center, I had to deal with engineers and technicians all the time. And I was an educator. So I learned very, very quickly to be able to take complicated ideas and simplify them down to something that I would understand. And if I could understand it, hopefully I'd be able to make an educational program that other people would be able to understand and learn from. And I kind of do that in this job as well, because I'm learning a lot, being a new councillor. The parking study, which is part of this, this overall package, when I read it through, I looked at it as this was what the situation was. This is what the situation was 4 years later. And these are some of the issues we might run into. And these are strategies for us to how we can deal with these things over the next 4 years. So I'm not too sure, in my mind, I'm not seeing, you know, anything seriously complicated about this document. It's just giving us some strategies and how we can deal with parking along the downtown core, knowing very well what's going to happen with the park, because the park is part of this. So I'm a bit mystified by, you know, if there's something secret in here that I'm missing, and maybe I've oversimplified it in my own mind, but it's a series of strategies on how we deal with parking over the next 20 years that goes along with the park. So I just wanted to mention that it's not an overly complicated document, and I don't think it is that difficult to understand. I also wanted to just address one of the comments brought up about the BMX park and those types of things. And this is one of the things that Councillor Sati and I had asked the planning team to do, was to, there was too many activities spread out all over the park. So what they did is consolidate some of those activities in the neighborhood area, which is where the kind of the tennis area is. And the idea was to have the tennis and the BMX, and there's already existing parking there. So you already have an existing parking lot. Then you can have all these activities based around that piece. So consolidating from a park management point of view allows for efficiencies in terms of operations. And because I ran the Courtright Center for many, many years, I understand that really well. So I can see why they did that. And I think it's, you know, it's a good idea. You know, we may not want a BMX park and the skating park as well, but the consolidation around an existing parking lot, I thought was a very good idea. And that was one of the things that we had talked to them about. So it is not where the fire hall is. It's kind of more where the tennis courts are. So I just wanted to bring those two items up because there's discussions going around those. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Sati?
Thank you. It starts to become, you know, a huge, this is like, I don't know, being at one of those bingo games and you got a bowl and they're all going all over the place. So I think there's the one idea was to defer this to allow residents to have the opportunity to speak in a public open forum. But there's a lot of, you know, ideas and comments from council about this. You know, I had my own concerns. I still do on the number of the projects. You know, wanting, although that it's a guideline, reassurance to both residents and council that when these items come up, such as the barbecues, such as some of the projects that I don't like, that we would have an opportunity to discuss them when they come to, I don't know, is staff going to take all the time to put a budget report together on each one of these items in the 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10 areas, that we have that opportunity to say, we don't have a majority council vote on that. We don't like the barbecue idea, or maybe we have a suggestion how it can be changed. So I don't know how we're going to work through that, or just that assurance that we will have that opportunity at that time, because I need that. Or for me, I have a problem with the park draft master plan. And I know it is, you know, staff have said it's a park within a park. We can see that. And that resident only, yes, sitting on the park ad hoc committee, the committee members discussed that and how it would look. We didn't feel that it would work. I think that this COVID right now has provided staff and council a perfect opportunity and residents to see how much staffing and resources it takes to make this resident only. Not only is it the cost to the town of losing the parking, which I don't agree with a lot of parking in the park. I like to see that moved, a lot of it moved out, is that we're losing that revenue, but the cost and resources that if we were doing this in the future, what it would cost the town in lost revenue, in operating dollars. So this could be well over $1 million a year and more just to try to keep it a residential park. And I'm not aware of any municipal park that goes that way. So that's just my comment on that. But I know it's a full vision. The parking study may be a simple one but I think it's very complex. And as a person who sits on the library board and what I shared with planning today, one of the guidelines in looking at is a suggestion that on-street parking or for the library, that the library lot be used. Well, the library doesn't even have spots enough in the lakeshore to meet their own needs for when they have events on Saturday, or Moms and Babies and Me and CD Saturday, etc. So it creates that, although the town is saying that they need possibly another 475 to 600 and something parking spots along Innisfil Beach Road, it's not, you can look at it, but it's not feasible, maybe nighttime, but so I see that there is some concerns. So there's a lot of discussion, a lot of pieces. If we're just deferring this to hear from residents in a public open forum, I'm going to ask staff, how do we handle these other concerns? I'm looking for some direction.
Mr. Rayner.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Sati. I just think it's important to zoom back out to the master plan level. And I would use the analogy of the Trails Master Plan when it came before Council. There was a proposed acquisition of $30 million worth of land to see the full vision of the Trails Master Plan connect all of our communities. Everyone on Council, and I think the public, assumed and understood that there was no possible way we would spend $30 million acquiring land in the near term. But without that long-term vision of trying to connect all of our communities, whatever that ultimately ends up looking like in a practical sense, we wouldn't know where to start and to get moving. So I think what we're interested in at this point is feedback around the guiding principles of the plan, as opposed to the very specific suggestions that require the allocation of significant dollars. So to answer your question directly, Councillor Sati, absolutely, each capital project and every dollar spent in the park moving forward into the 21-22 year and into our 10-year capital plan require Council's review and decision. But you're charged with being able to look at the master level to decide on the vision that gives direction to staff to prepare those detailed submissions for you in the budget. It is not the public's responsibility to provide feedback on those specific implementation pieces at this time, because we don't have the details of those specific implementation pieces. And so we would be asking the public to engage in something that isn't helpful. But much of what Galen's team has worked on is around providing illustrations so that people can understand what we're talking about when we use the guiding principles and imagine them coming to life. But we would be misrepresenting the actual authority of the master plan if we suggested that staff would go away and then implement all of those capital programs without further discussion with council. I'm very concerned that a continued deferral will invite expectations around the level of detail that ultimately will be adopted by council in the master plan. And I think it creates confusion for the public as well as staff about what the next steps are. We appreciate that it's complex and that there are multiple pieces at play here, but I'm going to suggest to you as your CAO that it's time to pick a vision, amend the vision if it's appropriate. If you've got an amendment that you want to see a principal change to the vision, absolutely this would be the opportunity to direct staff to either investigate that specifically and bring it back, or to amend it tonight. But otherwise, there's been a lot of comments about things you'd like to see or investigations that you'd like staff to undertake. But unfortunately, without council direction, which requires a motion, what you will see when we bring it back is exactly what's in front of you today. And that's not meant to be glib. It's meant to be, we've done everything we can at this point, and we've consulted. It won't be perfect. Unfortunately, that's not the standard, or fortunately, that's not the standard for master plans. They are very high level. They are meant to be 30,000 foot level. So really would encourage you to provide specific direction at this time, if you're going to defer this matter, so that we understand exactly what it is that you'd like to see, remembering that in only a few months, you'll be engaged in the capital program review for 21-22, which is the real specific details. There will be placeholders, of course, in the capital program that go out for our 10-year capital program. But I think as many of you have noted tonight, that entire capital program out 10 years is in a state of, well, it has a big asterisk beside it because of COVID. And so there is much work to be done to really analyze that long-term capital program, but we'll have the details for you for 21-22 for sure. Thanks very much, Your Worship. Appreciate the opportunity to chime in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. So I just have a couple of comments. First of all, please don't underestimate the amount of comments that we've got in on this plan. We had 900 comments. I don't think we've ever entered into a project, as long as I can remember, where we've had that type of community involvement and engagement in a project. I don't think we get a tenth of that in an official plan. So the open houses, if you had the opportunity to attend them, were packed. And I get that, you know, 1 or 2 people might want to come and do an open forum at the next meeting, but those 900 people who are waiting for us to take action on what they want and what they asked for can't be overlooked. And always remember that the people that are happy and think we're going in the right direction are going to be silent, and the ones who are not happy because they wanted a blue bench and not a green bench are the ones that we're going to hear from. If you look at the comments in the surveys that were done and what has transpired into this vision, I think it is, I think it's very well designed, and I think it reflects what those 918 or whatever surveys that came in said. I'm not a BMX person and I'm not a skateboard person, but you know what? There are residents and people in Innisfil who are really keen on that. And I remember meeting a little boy at the open house who was like, just couldn't wait to tell me how much he wanted a skateboard park. And we've been doing a whole bunch of youth engagement right now, a ton of youth engagement in our community and roundtables. And what we keep hearing is we want a place, we want a space in our town that isn't Tim Hortons, where we feel like we belong and where people aren't looking at us like we're not supposed to be there and we should be kicked out. And we heard that over and over again, any people who were able to participate in any of the youth roundtables. So I think it has to be a park for everybody. I think it has to have pickleball. I think it has to have a skateboard park. I think that right now it is the beach area and the trail, the path is very well utilized. But I think there's a huge piece of that park that is so underused. And I think it's, it really could, it needs to provide better service for people. So what I think we need, oh, and then as far as the budget is concerned, like getting into the details, we've made aggressive asks of our staff this year as far as property tax. We're asking for 0 in 2021 and 1% blended in 2022. And that's where we want to go. So if you've got a vision that, depending on what happens with COVID and depending on what happens with our economy, if that vision, if we don't see any of this vision for 5 years, then that's okay. But at least we're giving staff some kind of a direction and where to go. We have to, I think, definitely not think about, well, what happens if, I I don't know, like I read some comments about source water protection and the intake protection zone around where the boat is. Like all those things, all that level of planning is below, but we're never going to get there if we don't at least land on an overall vision for this space, just as we've done in the past. And those are my comments. So anybody else before we call the vote? Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. I like your points that you just brought forward there. My just concern is going back to page 7 of the 11 in the report, the downtown commercial area extension. So let's say we go ahead and we approve this master plan tonight and we don't go for a deferral. My concern when we pass this tonight, do we pass the approval of the downtown commercial area extension? I've been reading it over and over and over, and it's pretty clear. And I understand the words. Numerous strategies to ensure future infill development is undertaken in a responsible, sympathetic manner. And I remember hearing a lot of people's points last week that live in the area. If we pass it tonight, is there any way we can take out that paragraph that we're approving that commercial area extension tonight? Because we're supposed to be dealing with the Alcona parking study and the beach park master plan. I just think we're just putting that in there and it might get us in trouble. Maybe I'm wrong, just correct me if I am.
So yeah, I asked Mr. Pierce that question earlier. So if we approve a vision and then council chooses not to do the rezone on August the 12th, then Mr. Pierce said at that point, you give staff direction to make an amendment to this plan to match the zoning bylaw. Because this is way up here. The zoning bylaw is down in the weeds. This is a big overall 30,000 feet.
I'm very aware of that. I'm very aware of that. So I just wanted that clarification that if we put that in there, we leave it in there. I think on the 12th, maybe we can do amendments so that we let the residents there know we're not pushing them out right away. Just that's my concern.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Sati.
Okay, so if this is a vision that allows flexibility on these projects, and I just want to make it clear, I'm not opposed to the items that are all in the park. Sometimes it's the location that we, as I can't remember, Councillor Ices or Deputy Mayor, it's about looking at other areas in our community that need amenities, and some of these we need to share and not have everything in one spot. But if this is a vision that allows flexibility for council on each one of these items and flexibility in the Alcona parking study as guidelines, can we have that guidelines, the council approves the Innisfil Beach Park Master Plan as a guideline, that they approve the Alcona parking study as a guideline, because I just feel that allows it changes it to allow that there is that flexibility, that we aren't, sanctioning everything in this. I know you say it's a vision. I just need that. I need that assurance. I need that for residents. And at that time, when those items come up, then residents would have an opportunity to speak on them.
Mr. Kane?
Through your worship to Councillor Sati, yes, to be consistent with the discussion tonight, I don't see an issue with adding that verbiage to the council resolution. Particularly that gives certainty to yourselves and to the public.
Would the proper word be guideline or vision?
Speaking to a former planner, you'd say, vision would be preferred. That's typically what master plans are. And just while they're looking at language there, the other thing not to forget is the parks master plan process, if you can believe it, is up for renewal. I believe it is next year or the year after. Ms. Jenkins might be able to confirm that, but that will be coming up soon. And using these guideline or vision documents, whatever council ends up calling them, will certainly inform those master plans. And there'll be another round of debate about those things that should be spread out over the community or located in Innisfil Beach Park. Knowing that there's a lot of growth and intensification happening in the future along that stretch. So that's also information that might be helpful for council too. There is a wider Parks Master Plan process and debate coming up in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to mention, obviously I have no concern if there's going to be a friendly amendment like that for the vision, but it is the very first sentence of the executive summary says long-term vision. It's right there. So in the very first line. So, but if, putting that into the resolution, no problem whatsoever. If we can, possibly call the vote, because I think we've debated this one.
Thank you. Councillor Sati.
Thank you. I just like clarification. I don't know from legal or CAO or Patty Toma. There was people who wanted to speak in the public open forum on this. The closure was Monday at 4 p.m. So they would have spoken in the public open forum. That was the guideline. I even misinformed people that it closed on Monday at 4. So I'm still concerned. I want to make sure that we are fully transparent and that we residents had that opportunity. And if they didn't, then voting on this and not deferring it. I listened to our CAO, but I would just like some clarification on that.
Ms. Toma.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Sati, we did not turn away any person. We kept it open. Anybody that contacted the clerk's office was added to open forum, and there was no one that came forward for that purpose to speak to this item.
Thank you. Other questions or comments before we call the vote? Councillor Waters.
I just want to question the new terminology put in number 3, an Alcona parking study vision. It's nitpicking, but wouldn't that be better as guidelines on that one? Sorry.
Yeah, probably. Thank you for that. Okay, are we ready? All in favor of the recommendation on the screen? 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, hands up high so I can see you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried. Next item was item C3. And that was Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Just a comment. I'd like the people to sort of maybe educate themselves on, or maybe we can put something out there about Habitat for Humanity and how it's different from social housing. But my only concern, which might bite council later, as you know, this location of this land is very close to Mapleview Drive and the 25th Side Road, where we have a proposal for development going to 6-story buildings in that area, in that bush lot. So we have to be very careful, I think, because we have a lot of kickback from the community regarding that development on the corner 25th and Mapleview, which is just up the road from this. So if this lot goes 3, 4, 5 stories, I can just imagine how it sets precedent for the developer on that corner. So also I'd like Habitat for Humanity to look at single or double story only for that area. That's it. Thank you.
Did you have a seconder, Deputy Mayor? Councillor Van Berkel is seconding it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a problem with the resolution the way it is. I think to the residents, probably something wasn't said. I know that there was a lot of people that signed the petition and that spoke today about this. That was earmarked, if I remember correctly, as a fire hall, and that would have had a much greater impact to the neighborhood there. And it definitely would have been more than 2 or 4 stories for that firehouse be in that position there. So I think this much more passive use will be probably much more appreciated in the years to come rather than having a firehouse sitting right there. So just a comment on that.
Thank you. Did I see another hand, Councillor or Waters?
Just a quick comment. I think the gentleman who spoke mentioned that he's looking at maybe 2 stories. They don't do 3 stories, so I can see this being a development of 2 stories and less than, he said 18 units. So I feel quite comfortable that it won't be overpowering in terms of the height, and I think they can easily be hidden with trees and other landscaping around that property.
Thank you. Mr. Kane, can I just ask the process going forward from here? If this were to pass tonight, then this comes back as a, does it come back in some kind of a public process?
Yes, Your Worship, I'm glad you asked the question. So typically we wouldn't have done, the standard procedure for land dispensation with the town, wouldn't have notification until the actual bylaw came. So we went above and beyond just to ensure that the community knew sooner rather than later that this was going to be discussed at council. So this is the very first time this is being discussed, and definitely not the last time. So to your question, yes, there is a full planning process that we were required, including public meetings and public open houses, and we heard a commitment from Habitat tonight to participate in that, and we're grateful to have such a willing applicant in that process. At the same time, the resolution to enter into that agreement can also outline that process as well, and a commitment to that process to ensure that this does get its day and have some good debate and start thinking of those things that we've already started thinking of, but certainly need to formalize through a more detailed design process, like built form, like setbacks from the neighbors and noise and traffic and all those sorts of things that we normally do, and hopefully get a great project for the community at the end of that process.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Councillor Sati.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and I just wanted, there was a lot of comments about residents concerned with crime and property values being devalued. And I have in Ward 3, the 7-story, 54-unit of affordable housing. And I think a lot of time people confuse affordable with social housing. And I have to tell you, with the residents that are in that building, they are so respectful. It has been a year now. There's no crime. There's nothing increased around it. The residents are happy. And I think it's about, the comments that really got me, it's about a leg up. And it's not just families, it could be seniors. So I look forward to the town staff planning, working with Habitat to ensure that that it is complementary to the area. And I like the fact that with Habitat that they are considerate enough to go into the community to speak to the residents. And I think that shows a lot about them wanting everyone to be happy with what's being built and how it's going to work.
Thank you. Did I see Councillor Icey's card?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on this as well. I'm so excited to have this motion come forward, and I'd like to follow Councillor Waters and be able to help with this project. They're such a great organization for our community to partner with, and for us to get this donation to them, to, like Councillor Sati said, just to give families a leg up, and I think it's just going to add so much to our community. So I'm very excited to see this come before council. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have to let them know they've got 2 volunteers already. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really like the idea of having this on the property the comments that were made about the safety of the area and guns and everything else, these people are going to be, it's giving them a sense of pride that they can have their own place. And I don't have a problem with it at all. And, I look forward to it coming because I think this is a great thing for the community. And I'm putting my name in there for it as well. And I'm going to help as much as I can.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. All right, seeing no other hands, all in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? So that's carried unanimously. Next was item C5, the shared services exploration, and that was pulled by Councillor Sati, was it?
Yes, correct. And my seconder is Councillor Ken Fowler. And I just want to pull this item with being a library board, member of the library board for both last term and this term, 7 years. I just wanted to look at some of this and get a little bit of information as well from Miss Peg. I don't know if she's on this or I just want to say about with the library, and I didn't know how this was going to work, shared services, and I wanted to really give a plug to our library, especially during COVID. I think it's been a great demonstration of the innovation of our libraries and how they help in emergency situations. And we've been the only library out of most of the communities, I believe, in Simcoe County that continue to offer virtual programs, planning, hack projects that were virtual as well. But most importantly, it's the care calls, the case calls that they were providing within our community. And if we're going to continue to have second waves of that, I think the mental health issues and the stress is only going to continue. And the library welcomes the opportunity to continue working in the community and providing that necessary support and connection to the services that residents need, both connecting them to the health, the financial, the medical resources that are available. And I have to say that I have been so proud of the library's financial budgets that they have not only met their budgets every year, but they have also come under, they have generated revenue. And I think that our library will be a great resource for coming up with different methods of offering opportunities to other communities if they don't have the services in maybe things such as the virtual programs, being able to connect to our library. But I just wanted to share that. I think it's important. And of course, we had the examples of our our fire department with our chief being shared with Bradford and how well that works. So I think that the town of Innisfil has a lot of great opportunities in innovation to offer to other communities. And I am not sure if there was something else from staff to be able to share a little bit more on how they feel that this is going to work.
Ms. Peg?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Sati. So through the process of shared services, I am very pleased to hear your kind comments regarding the Idea Lab and Library. For sure, across the One Town, One Team, we've seen exceptional performance from our staff stepping up and stepping in through COVID and even pre-COVID. Sue Bowes, the acting CEO of Idea Lab and Library, has been engaged in the conversations regarding shared services, and same with our other chief executives in South Simcoe Police and Empower and Services. Those conversations between myself and our CAO with those leaders are ongoing. And we absolutely intend to continue that engagement through this process. With the investment of the modernization grant into the exploration of shared services and the ECHO project, it will allow for the implementation of sustainable change. So when achieved, the sustainable change helps us move from making conscious efforts to change to establishing new ways of providing services. So this one-time sort of financial injection from the modernization grant will allow us to see longer-term benefits through partnerships with the One Town, One Team and other areas such as, County of Simcoe, et cetera.
Thank you, Ms. Pegg. Follow-up, Councillor Sati?
Thank you. Yes, and I think that with COVID, it shows a great demonstration of town staff being redeployed, because some of the best ideas come from other departments. And I think I know that the library welcomes this challenge, and they are looking forward to it, as well as I'm sure the other departments. I didn't have any recommendations for change. I just want to say how well all of our staff are doing. And sometimes, as I said, the best ideas come from outside your own department. So look forward to the report back to council.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, fresh eyes are always a good thing. I can tell you the Police Services Board met on Monday night, and they also accepted the challenge. The One Town, One Team has become our motto, and that's great. But in this report, it extended that to one customer. And I think we always have to remember there's one taxpayer, and we have to get out of our silo mentality and understand that if we can share services across our team, that it's helping that one customer make sure they're getting the biggest bang for their buck. The one comment I had of Ms. Pegg, and I know you mentioned that you're dealing with the County of Simcoe as well, to let you know that, and I'm sure you do, that they have a parallel process going on right now. They're doing a governance review, but they're also doing a services model review. And they're looking at where services could be shared as well. So just want to make sure we're working in tandem and not duplicating any effort or working crossways with them. Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. It'll be great to put that money to use. If you guys will remember that it was Minister Clark chose Innisfil to make the province-wide announcement for the modernization funding. So we're going to put it to good use. All right, next is the Sleeping Lion Water Balance Offsetting Agreement, and that was Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Ken was going to second me on it.
Councillor Fowler's the seconder, yes.
Okay, good. I'm going to say I'm terribly disappointed in this agreement with Sleeping Lion. In terms of looking after, say, Lake Simcoe, in terms of its phosphorus loading, its sediment loading, and the toxins that go into the lake, the best place to start are on-site remediation. And that's what the rain gardens were all about, was on-site remediation. Now, I know there's been a few issues with a few, in the report it says that the majority of the people accepted them or are looking after them, but there are a few people who complained about them. And based on that, we're going to allow phase 2 and phase 3 to go ahead. Without these, they can basically buy their way out of it and ask Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority to come up with some sort of alternative, which is going to be closer to the lake in terms of stormwater management, ponds, typical ways of dealing with flooding issues in the town. And so we're going to be increasing phosphorus loads, we're going to be increasing sediment loads, and we're going to be increasing toxic loads. So I'm terribly disappointed that we've, after a few complaints and one pilot project, that we're going to scrap. It seems like we're going to scrap the whole idea of rain gardens. I offered many times to go in there and do education workshops with people. No one ever approached me. It just seems there was no commitment from the developer's point of view to allow this to happen. And if this is a group that we're going to be work with, if we can't get them to do rain gardens in their developments, how are we ever going to get them to do stuff at the orbit? in terms of some of the really innovative stuff we want to do down there. So I wanted to state that I'm disappointed in us backing out so quickly on this, and then we're giving up. But there are all sorts of alternatives. There's infiltration trenches they could have tried, which takes the sightliness of the garden out of the way. There's bioswales, there's bioretention ponds. There's all sorts of other aspects. I don't know if they even discuss these other site alternatives, as opposed to just asking Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority through their new water balancing offset program to kind of buy their way out of it and come up with another solution, which is going to be more typical around stormwater management ponds, which for the town leaves us with liability of a pond which we have to manage and take sediment over years and years and years. It's going to be more costly to the town. So I would like to send this back to them to see whether or not they would entertain other site-specific solutions to the rain gardens on this site and then phase 2 and phase 3. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Mr. McKenzie, did you have a response?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Waters. Just want to go back to what you first said about getting rid of the rain gardens and causing phosphorus loadings to increase. There's actually no phosphorus, or very, very, very little in this water that's going to the rain gardens. It's only capturing roof water. So it's clean water. There's no pollutants. The roads and the driveways do not drain to them. So it's clean water. So if you were to move the facilities downstream more, you would actually net a better phosphorus reduction if you moved it to a centralized facility downstream. So that's just one clarification of what these rain gardens were. The site was originally designed, and still is to this day, constructed that way to not even account for rain gardens. So they've met their phosphorus targets at the day. It's not for flooding control. It was just added on at the top end for the water balance. And they did look at different alternatives, like more infiltration galleries and trenches in the yards. They looked at trenches in the backyards, which would tend to get in the way of people putting pools in the backyards, and they get removed over time. And then it's very hard for town staff to control what happens in any part of the yard, let alone being in the backyard. They looked at burying it underground in the front yard, but you have to keep it about 4 meters away from the house. It has to be a lot deeper than the rain gardens to allow for sod cover and grass to grow over top of it. And then if you push it down further in the ground, you start running into conflicts with the groundwater separation that the Ministry of Environment puts restrictions on. So they've looked at multiple ways. They back in 2012, before my time, I think there was design charrettes where they presented something to our public works of putting infiltration galleries in the right of ways. At the time, the town said no, there's not enough room. But when you get the water mains and the utilities and the sidewalks, our traditional 20-meter right of way doesn't work with enhanced swales due to the cover and conflict with utilities and servicing. So it definitely, there are alternative opportunities that they do work in other climates, such as permeable pavement. That would be an option to look at, in future developments. But right now, Sleeping Lion phase 1 and 2, the roads are in. Phase 3 roads are almost constructed, so they're not designed for that sort of thing. So, I would put on the developer in the orbit to maybe look at something like permeable pavers in the trail systems that they're going to be, along the railway or something like that in future developments. But they have looked at quite a few options on this site in particular, and just given the constraints with the groundwater and certain things, conflicts with utilities, it has been difficult. And I took a drive through the site today, phase 1, and noticed a lot of the homeowners in the gardens that tend to be maintained well have ripped out the rain garden plants and put their own flowers and stuff in there. I'm not sure over time if they've added different types of soils there that will impact the function of the rainwater gardens. It's hard to tell over time, but they have modified them already, and currently without a bylaw, it's hard for the town to enforce that. So I'm not sure if I know you had comments. You really didn't have a specific question for me, but I just kind of elaborated a little bit on that.
Thank you. Very helpful, Mr. McKenzie. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Just to Mr. McKenzie's point, and I remember there was a lot of consultation on what they would do there, but being the councillor in that area, I get all the complaints, and I get a lot of them for these rain gardens. One of the big problems is they span 2 houses. It's not your garden and your garden. They go across, most of them go across 2 properties. Half of them are maintained, the other half isn't. And, you know, like I've had calls to say, you know, what are these things before they buy a house? And when you tell them what they are, well, I wouldn't want that in mine. I won't buy a house here. It's a deterrent for sleeping lion. I bet you over the last 2 years that I've had at least 20 complaints on them, or people calling, what are they for? And you're absolutely right. Most people have ripped out the grass, put in topsoil, and put in the flowers. And these rain gardens are doing absolutely nothing. I think the money would be better spent on figuring out a way to send the water somewhere else rather than, you know, they're just not doing any good. They're just, people won't maintain them. That's the biggest thing. They hate them. And for my money, I say, you know, take the money in lieu and figure something else out.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Waters.
I guess my question would be then, I think there wasn't a good education program built around these things. That's what I'm assuming. If they're asking those questions, what are they for? My question to Mr. McKenzie would be, what alternative is the Conservation Authority going to have? Are we going to get stormwater management ponds? And we know the situation of stormwater management ponds is a long-term financial burden to the town. And those ponds are not clean water ponds. They're I won't say, I'm going to use the word toxic, but I don't mean they're that, but they're highly polluted. So what alternative are we going to come up with to deal with this if we're not dealing with it on site?
Mr. McKenzie.
Okay, through your worship, Councillor Waters. So it's the money wouldn't be taken to, I think the LSRCA is pretty clear on it. The money is a water balance offsetting only. So it wouldn't be taken and to make a traditional stormwater pond with pollutants. It would be taken to enhance a typical stormwater pond, to create infiltration, I'll say, around the pond before it gets to the pond or something. I don't have a design in front of me, but it's an enhancement to a pond, so downstream. So let's just say, for instance, we, you know, there's an EA process going on right now with the Lefroy, the creek diversion in Lefroy, and there's a big stormwater facility proposed for the wetland area. If we were to take this money and add on to that and make some sort of enhancement to that for groundwater infiltration, I think that's where you would get rid of those pollutants that are, you know, floating around in a traditional pond. It's something that would be kind of hammered out through the detailed design process.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor or Sati?
Thank you, Your Worship. To Mr. McKenzie, you referred to these just handling the roof water and mentioned about trenches. So is that the same when trenches, is that the same as the swales that are on properties to handle the flow of water to remove it?
Yes, Councilor Sati, a trench is would kind of be underneath of a swale. Typically, you put like a rock trench 2 or 3 feet deep under a swale, so the water will run naturally on the overland to the swale and then soak in the swale into a trench. It's like an old French drain type of solution.
Okay. So swales are still on the property then? This doesn't eliminate those?
No, it would still be the same thing. It would be the roof water being directed into a swale or a trench on private property. There would still be the enforcement issue we would have with that.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel?
Thank you, Your Worship. My thing is, first of all, people don't want them, but the other thing is if they destroy them, you know, the flowers, ordinary flowers don't do it, and topsoil doesn't do it. It's the grasses that were planted by the developer. You know, that's the theory of this thing. So people are they're destroying them. They're just not doing their job. And so we're better off without them, not particularly in this phase here, but in the next phases, come up with some alternative that works.
Thank you, Councillor. I have to tell you that I share in Councillor Waters' disappointment. But I've also gotten the calls, and you know, what is it and when can I get rid of it? So and I agree, more education needs to be done, but I think that you know, when I remember hearing it was I was at a conference, and it was at the Courtright Center, and it was the talk was called Granite versus Green, and it was a developer saying, we're developers, we want to build what people want to buy. If people wanted round houses, we'll build round houses. We just want to build what people want to buy. And he was putting the onus on the environmental community to convince people what they wanted, to do the education with the purchaser so that people wanted these things. And he used granite versus green. Like he'd say, you know, we'll build a greenhouse. But people would say, well, no, thanks. I'd rather 9-foot ceilings and a granite countertop. So I think the onus has to be on, we do have to do more education, but we have to convince people, we have to change people's behavior, and changing behavior takes time. And we have to make people value these things, understand them and value them, so that they want to purchase them. And then when they want to purchase them, then the developers will be happy to build them. It's just right now we're trying to force the relationship, and we can do education, they can do education, but in the end, it's got to be what people want, or else we're just going to be, you know, racking our brains because we'll have to try to police people to want them. Mr. McKenzie?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So with that educational piece, I will note in the report, I did identify that we would be working with the developer to put together an educational piece, maybe a community day or something like that for the people, I guess, in phase 1 sleeping line that does have established rain gardens, and go over that. In their purchase and sale agreement, they should have received an educational brochure we had put together back in the subdivision agreement and the registration. So the education piece would include that, and maybe some, you know, verbal discussion on the benefits of what these are for. So there is an added spot in there. I'm not sure if we want to amend the recommendations at all to include an education piece. It is in the report, and we would capture that in the legal agreement.
As long as it's in the report, I think it's all right. Yeah. Any other comments? Final comments? Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you. I remember when this was being discussed 2 terms back on council. When you go to the options and alternatives, it states very clearly in there, restrictions already exist on residential properties related to the building size, location, blah, blah, blah. But they also have to maintain the rain gardens. It states it right there. This could include the vegetation and when the filter media becomes clogged with fine soils, it may have to be dug up and replaced. It's under options and alternatives. So when we do this offsetting, are we not going to be able to enforce this option alternatives, where it says maintenance could include the vegetation, and when the filter media becomes clogged with fine soils, it may have to be dug up and replaced. This could be costly and difficult for bylaw and operations to manage. So we're gonna not worry about it anymore and just move forward. Hopefully what they do in the next two phases is better than what they did here. Is that correct?
Mr. McKenzie?
Well, if this resolution, these recommendations get passed tonight, then we won't have to worry about them in phase 2 and phase 3 because they won't exist. Phase 1, they are noted in the subdivision agreement. However, with consultation with our legal department, a bylaw is required to actually enforce these. They're in the subdivision agreement, which is on title. So we would need to introduce a bylaw and begin enforcing them, or we do the education or the educational piece.
Okay, well, I think we've already let that horse out of the park, so we'll not worry about that. And maybe in the future, when we come across this stuff, we'll be a little bit better with our education. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully people will start to value this type of development and LID as it becomes more commonplace. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report? Those opposed? One opposed. Oh, sorry, Councillor Nicol.
I'm just checking to see procedurally. I think Alex, Councillor Waters was the one that brought this forward. I assumed that he was voting against it, so I don't know if you need another mover.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. A seconder can vote against, but I think the mover has to vote in favor. Is that right, Mr. Parkin?
I believe so. I believe the procedural bylaw does say that a mover can't vote against it, just to avoid that situation.
Thank you. So since you brought it up, I'll get you to move it there, Councillor Nicol. Okay, thank you. And so that was one opposed. And the next item was item C8. And I pulled that, but if somebody just wants to, if somebody wouldn't mind moving and seconding that item. So Councillor Ices and Councillor Fowler. So I just wanted to pull this motion. It provides an overview of where we start. It's a first start. We do not have a diversity policy, an inclusion policy. And so I think it's a good first step, but only a first step. And it's not only just for our community, but it's our own corporation too. So we're going to be doing a number of things moving forward, and the next steps are listed in the report. And given the hour, I'm not going to read it, but I just didn't want this to just go by without suggesting that we know we can do better. We know we need to do better, and this is our starting point. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for pulling that. I took the opportunity to go to the Black Lives Matter protest that was at the IRC a couple of weeks ago, and it was really valuable because this is something that we think we as people that aren't affected as much, we think we do a pretty good job, and it was pretty clear from that event that, you know, we need to do better, whether it's at this level, whether it's training for staff, whether it's police, whether it's, you know, it's through our whole town and our whole organization. And you're right, this is just a starting point, and this is our opportunity to make our community better. So that's what I took from going to that protest there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I was also at Black Lives Matters, and we'll leave it at that. I'm hoping we go forward in a very more progressive way. About a year ago, I received several emails from an individual working for the town, and this person was a person of color and different religion, and this person felt that he was passed over in a promotion, or they were passed over in a promotion because of their color and ethnicity. I reached out to him if he wanted me to do something at the time. At the time, this person said no, because of the community. And it was quite sad. And he was racially profiled in many ways, and racist comments were made against him. And he really took it to heart. So at that time, we decided not to do anything. And I think in Black Lives Matters, we said enough is enough. And we supported that. And I know it exists in the town, in particular departments. And I think with this, if we really work hard, education, 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 we can start moving forward. And we educate at every level, every culture, every diversity, every sexuality. I think then maybe we can be one town, one team with diversity. So I appreciate it very much, the work that's going into this, and I like just to move forward in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wondered, in the Black Lives Matter, there's a lot of discussion around defunding police. I think a lot of work needs to go into that. But what I was just wondering whether or not it's worthwhile asking for a report from our police chief in terms of what they're doing around this issue, or what they plan on doing around this issue over the next little while, considering the great demands that are put upon our police force in terms of what they need to do to keep our community safe. I know as a teacher, is that, you know, teachers are always being demanded to do something else. And at some point in time, you're asking them to do too many things. And in the case with police, I think we're in the same situation. We're putting them in a situation where, it's, you know, they may not feel comfortable. So I'm just wondering whether or not it's worthwhile asking our chief of police to maybe give us a report back in terms of where the police are in terms of their diversity training. What type of training are they doing to help with mental health issues? Because I think the mental health issues is one that's really perplexing and seems to rear its ugly head time and time again. And it's a complex situation. I don't say it's an easy situation, but I just thought it might be worthwhile asking our chief of police to give us a report around this issue.
Thank you. Well, our chief of police happens to be with us tonight, so I'm sure he'd be happy to speak to that now. Chief Fletcher.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Dolan, and through you to Councillor Waters. We've been ahead of this for a number of years in policing with a tremendous amount of work on particularly mental health. We have a crisis outreach and support team within the South Simcoe Police Service that we developed back in 2017 into 2018. We work closely with our mental health partners, with CMHA and YSSN at York Region, with the focus on diverting people out of medical facilities and out of crisis through other manners so that we don't have to apprehend and use force. We've done a lot of training with our staff around diversity and really focusing on inclusivity. And most recently, we've moved towards addressing further engagement with the community through collaboration, through an internal diversity and inclusivity committee, and also an external facing stakeholder engagement roundtable that we're just starting off with. So again, to your point, Councillor Waters, like teaching within the policing field, when they start to defund mental health and social service providers, ultimately being the only 24/7 agency left to respond to those calls, we get stuck with it. We're happy to pass that torch to mental health professionals and counselors, but just as we see in so many other professions, when that person in crisis is holding a knife or a gun and nobody else really wants to be there.
Thank you. The COAST program is something that I think we should be really proud of. I've forgotten what the acronym stood for, so thanks for the reminder. But as I understand it, it's a plainclothes officer in a plainclothes car and a mental health expert that team up, and they're 5 days a week, Chief?
Yeah, they're 5. We went back to 4 this past couple of months, but we're hoping to get back up to 5 days a week.
Thank you. And then I think the other really important work, and we heard about it just a couple of weeks ago, was the community safety and well-being plan that the chief came and delegated on. And that whole idea of prevention versus proactive versus reactive, and identifying all the stakeholders and the key partners. And like I said that night, I know that Chief Fletcher has been at the top ahead of the curve of that, and look forward to the really good work that's coming there. Councillor Waters?
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. And I think with the Rosado Center and the mental health unit that we have there, I think it's a really good opportunity to make those partnerships stronger, so that we don't have these types of incidents in Innisfil, because we've been proactive in trying to manage that situation in a much healthier way. So I'm glad to hear what the chief has said, and I'm pleased with what he said. Thank you.
Thank you. And the only other thing I'll add is the school program too, which is great. Because if you get those kids, whether it's elementary or high school kids, to, befriend a police officer, it makes it so much easier. They're not afraid as they grow up, but they're used to dealing with it. Like my kids grew up with Officer Rob, and he was like a brother to them almost. And it's really, it's a good relationship to start at an early age, and it's been, I think, really successful in our community. Any other questions to the chief? Councillor Sati?
Sorry, no, I didn't have a question for the chief, just a comment on this item. Just that I think it's, I commend staff for bringing this forward. I think it's always good to review, to look at what we are doing, how we can do it better, and the importance of inclusivity is key, I think, as we're changing, and to just be aware of what we're doing. Because there's always ways that we can do it better, and that community feedback is important, because again, it's from others outside the organization looking in. When we get that cooperation, they may say, no, you're not, and here's some recommended changes. So I think it's a great report, and I'm glad to see that this is on the agenda.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Just a quick note, maybe we could send this policy to Amarath, to the mayor there, after his comments were made yesterday on diversity in the town of Amarath. It was quite interesting. If you didn't get a chance to read it, on simco.com today by Chris Simon. Thanks.
Okay, so any other comments or questions? All in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you for being here, Chief Fletcher. Appreciate that very much.
You're very welcome. Have a good night.
Thank you. Our next item is C9, and that was pulled by Councillor Kenneth Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. My seconder is Councillor Waters. When I read this report, I looked at the layout of the maps included in the staff report, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that we've expanded the parking control around our beaches. I think especially in a time with COVID being such a big player in the health of and well-being of everybody, that we need to get a better grip on who parks where and how and why and what we can do. The one thing I did notice though, and I spoke to Bylaw earlier today regarding the matter, and I really appreciate the feedback I got. I took a drive up to Leonard's Beach yesterday. I came along and I measured what I perceived to be the parking signs compared to what was actually on the map. And I noticed one small discrepancy that, well, two, but they were, when I brought to Bylaw's attention, they said that we can work forward with this. If you go up along Purvis, the no parking signs on both sides of the street only go up 100 meters. But in the bylaw, it states it's up for 200 meters. So there's that miscommunication with people when they park. If you go up Ireton from Leonard's Beach, if you go northerly from 10th line up, the signs are only 100 meters up, but it's 500 meters up that they're not allowed to park on the east side. So that being the case, everyone, when they put the new rules in place along Chestnut and Leonard and whatnot, everyone's going to think, okay, well, here's the one sweet spot I can now park without getting a ticket. And that's on the west side of Ireton. And that is going to cause a massive problem. I mean, we're already having cars up and down the road, not paying attention, and it's going to congest even more so because it's going to become a choke point. So that being said, I'd like to have an amendment put forward on this, that the resident permit parking only be on the west side of Ireton for 500 meters northerly from 10th line, and that the signage be clearly placed on the east side of Ireton that reflects what is in the current parameters of the bylaw. So basically on the west side, like they did on one side of Chestnut, we have on Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays, we have resident only parking. So people who can't get into the Innisfil Beach Park because of the congestion, they can actually go and park legally and legitimately on Ireton and get down to Leonard's Beach. And those that are not residents, I'm sorry, if when the time comes, if you're not able to get up early enough or get to the place where the parking lot is full, I'm sorry, but we need to take care of our residents. And this allows, by law, it gives them a little more teeth to help maintain a little bit of law and order around the beaches on the long weekends and the regular weekends when the temperature and we have our out-of-towners come in.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this one? Councillor Sati?
Thank you. What's a time frame that they would be able to do this, Councillor Fowler? Did bylaw indicate that?
They can, from what I understand, once the motion comes into play, we should have no trouble. They can enforce it, but it's just a matter of getting the signs up. And once we have the signs up, then there will be no excuse for ignorance of the new law.
Mr. Enwood?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Council. I'd have to consult with the team on timing. Obviously, there's some existing bylaw signage that needs to be updated. I also want to comment on the new signage and the new restrictions being proposed. Ireton's a pretty short street. I'm not on it at the particular moment, but I'm also aware of a park at the northerly end, and I think it's appropriate that staff undertake a bit of a good look at this. This is a new issue. I think many of the streets that are being proposed in this report this evening have gone through a variety of pilot stages, and of course have had their due diligence reviewed to make sure that everything's applicable, everything needs to be put in, that can and needs to be put in place is. So I think it's appropriate that staff have the opportunity in conjunction with bylaw to study this matter and bring back to council, if appropriate, a recommendation around this. Because I'm conscious of a variety of issues where we've perhaps done something quickly and then realize what those unintended consequences are after we've done it. So obviously this is new to some staff, and we're interested in studying a little bit before we formalize a bylaw.
Okay. Follow up, Your Worship?
Go ahead.
Okay. I can appreciate the fact that a study needs to be done, But if you go down there on any weekend, you don't need a study. I'm sorry. And on top of that, now that Ireton is going to be opened up when they start building houses in Ennis Village, Ireton's going to extend all the way up westbound onto 25th. So it is going to become a thoroughfare. Once they open that up, it's going to be even worse. People are going to be coming through trying to find alternate routes to park at the beach. This is something that needs to be addressed. I've got numerous emails, phone calls. I've heard how people are not respecting the parking lot. They're not respecting the streets. And if we leave this one spot out at this moment in time, we are going to create a choke point. It's before they had Chestnut, and now we've addressed that, which I appreciate very much so. However, you take away Chestnut, you take away Leonard, you take away Purvis, they're going to go to Ireton. And where they can't park on the east side, they're going to park on the west side. And it's just the one spot. It's going to create a vacuum, and someone's going to figure it out. Once one person knows, everybody's going to know. And then it is just right there. It's going to be a major conflict.
Mr. Inwood, so I'm confused now. So this report tonight is amending the bylaw. So are you suggesting you have to study the added clause or the entire bylaw?
Thank you, Your Worship, and appreciate the clarity question. We would like, and I'm not talking about a third-party study, I'm talking about an internal staff review of the street, but we are talking specifically about the amendment or the motion to amend that's on the screen right now.
Okay. Thank you. Another question to you, Mr. Inwood. So there was some issues on Florence as well, but when I spoke to a lady on Florence today, new signs went up today.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a possibility. I don't happen to have the records of what the staff was doing today, but there were some amendment areas that needed to be cleaned up. There was, I know in the last week or so, there was some additional signage put up on the 25th as well, complementing the existing signage. So there's a good possibility that there was some additional signs added today on Florence, but certainly nothing that would be outside of what's proposed in today's revised bylaw or updated bylaw.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Fowler?
Okay. Mr. Inwood, if I may ask, if we do an internal investigation report, the town staff, they go take a look, what time frame will we be looking at before we get something back to council? I personally, I would like to get this done as rapidly as possible, as safely as possible, as reasonably as possible, before we have an incident that cannot be taken back. I'm trying to get a time frame, because when people start piling up on Ireton, and I'm using that term piling up, they're going to come to me and ask me why, what time frame, whatever, and we need to be able to give them something so that they understand that the town is listening to them, that their councillor is listening to them, that they're not being negated as they feel yet again.
So, Councillor, what you're saying here is the bylaw is already in place for what you're asking for.
What I'm saying is, under this report, they've included a number of streets around Leonard's Beach as well as other beach ends. I'm saying that they've done a good job overall. I'm not complaining. I appreciate the fact that they've expanded it. However, they've overlooked one specific point, which once people realize there's a loophole or a safe spot or whatever you wish to refer to it as, that there's going to be a problem. I foresee a massive problem occurring, and it takes literally a few signs, and then bylaw can go in and keep law and order, for lack of a better term.
So I'm trying to help you here, Councillor, but so what I'm trying to say is that right now the bylaw isn't already done. We don't have to amend the bylaw for this piece, right? The bylaw is already in place. It says that reflects what is currently parameters of the bylaw. So you're not asking to amend the bylaw here. You're saying the bylaw is already in place. You just want signage to match the bylaw.
I'm asking that the west side of Ireton be declared resident only parking on the weekends as they do Saturday, Sunday, and residential statutory holidays. We've done it for one side of Chestnut under this report, under this very report. On one side we have no parking whatsoever, and on the I believe it's on the north side it's residential only on Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays. So I'm asking that that same process be applied to Ireton, but instead of it being north and south side, the east side remains a no parking zone for the 500 meters up, which is currently in place. But I'd like to mirror it on the west side with a resident permanent parking only on the Saturdays, the Sundays, and the statutory holidays to allow our residents to enjoy the beach and put a little bit of control in the one space that people will be taking advantage of.
Okay, so you're asking, so I guess it was that current parameters of the bylaw that mixed me up. So you are asking for the bylaw to be amended?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and on the west side?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm clear now. Is everybody else clear what's being asked for? Okay, questions or comments? Mr. Inwood, any comment on the, is this giving you heartburn, the amendment?
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to take direction from council. My advice at this time is to give us a bit of time to just have a good internal review of the situation before we make an amendment to the bylaw. And to Councillor Fowler's point, I'd love to tell you that I can have that done for the next meeting. I can't make that commitment right now. Sorry, it's nearly bedtime. It's well past bedtime around this house. My apologies. But I would suggest that we can have a review done in the coming weeks and report back to council during the summer months. But I can't make a commitment right off the top of my head to a specific time.
If we could do it before the end of the summer, so that way that we have something in place, I know many residents would be incredibly grateful, even for the effort just to get the ball rolling. Once we tell them that we're looking into and what we can do, I know that will ease a lot of concerns for a lot of people.
Okay, so we've got a meeting July the 15th. Any chance, Mr. Inwood?
If that is the wish and desires of council, I'm happy to make solid efforts to get that done in time. It may be a late add-on report, but I will endeavor to do my best.
Thank you. That's all we can ask. Councillor Payne.
You worship. Oops. I was in that area last weekend, and if you have parking on both sides of the street, those aren't wide streets. If you have parking on both sides of the streets and you're driving down, and this happened to me on the weekend, you're driving down the street, you've got cars over this side, you've got cars over on the other side, and another car is coming towards you. There's nowhere to go. The roads are too narrow to have that much traffic and parking on those roads. Like it's almost impossible to pass another car when the cars are already parked on the side of the roads. That's okay if the roads are wider, but these roads aren't wide. So it's just it happened to me. It wasn't a fun ride. And I'll tell you, I'll never go down there again on a weekend, but I don't think it'll work. I really don't.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Feller.
Just to clarify for Councillor Payne, I'm on the east side of Ireton, there is no parking allowed at all. It is on the west side that I'm proposing residents only parking on the Saturdays, Sundays, and statutory holidays. So it will be one vehicle on the west side and not on both sides to minimize it as much as humanly possible.
All right, So I just got a couple of comments to make on this, and then we'll call the vote on the motion to amend. Oh, I see Mr. Vickers. Did you want to make a comment, Mr. Vickers?
No, I just, I'm here with Jason, and I'm being a silent partner, but the concerns are all legitimate, and it's just, I want to support Jason in that the workload's extremely heavy, and I think that's part of Jason's reservation. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but that's part of his angst, I think, is the resources that we have in making these changes. But I don't think there's any opposition to the changes, but I think he'll just feel more comfortable if we do a little more shared digging deeper. A lot of the recommendations came out of bylaws, review of situations and their knowledge of the situation. And we haven't maybe discussed this with Jason's team to the degree that we should have. Right. So we'll endeavor to do that in the next couple of weeks, and we'll come back here with something maybe a little more crystal on this.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. Councillor Sati.
Thank you. I can appreciate Councillor Fowler's pain, and I can say that what has worked in the streets off of Lakelands area, Hastings and that, it's no parking on both sides of the street. So nothing for residents, just no parking, and it's the way to keep the street clear. So I can understand staff wanting to take a look at this. And that would also, Councillor Fowler, also solve the problem of any parking on the street. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. It's a no-win, this situation. There's always, if you put no parking and then somebody has a friend over and then they want to be able to park on the street, there's always an issue. But I just wanted to go back a little bit about, this is our attempt to try to keep our beaches as safe as possible and yet still keep them open. We've seen in the paper that other communities in Ontario have had to close their beaches. And that's not just closing them to visitors, that's closing them to everyone. The Elora Gorge had to close this week, last weekend as well. So it's not just us, it's everywhere. And this is the best and easiest, well, not easiest, this is the best way to try to keep our parks from being overrun. We cannot, as much as everybody wants resident only, and the conversation earlier about keeping the park resident only, legally, this is how we can do it. We cannot have people asking for identification for people walking across the grass. There's no, that would be like if you were walking down a street, walking on a sidewalk in Barrie, and a police officer, bylaw officer, walked over and asked you for your ID, and if you were living in another community, they'd ask you to leave. This is the best way that we have to keep our beaches for resident only legally. Other communities have been calling, asking us how we're doing it. I know Barrie right now has done a similar thing. They've gone resident only waterfront, but Monday night they also passed to triple their parking fees. So they are going to go back to visitor parking. And now that they've tripled their fees will match our fees as far as parking fees are concerned. So we understand that we are getting inundated, and as is other parts of the province, and we're doing everything we can, including deputizing more people to write parking tickets when they are found to park in a spot that they're not. We did turn away 900 cars on Saturday. And we are also watching the, Saturday and Sunday. And we're also watching the private parking lots, the business parking lots, where at 25th and also the home hardware lot. So we're doing what we can, folks, in these state of emergency times. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. Cognizant of the time as well, I wonder if Councillor Fowler would consider a friendly amendment, just that staff be directed to report back on his motion number 3 in a timely manner, rather than just putting it all like that. I think that was the ask from staff to give them a bit of time to actually to review the implications of that.
Councillor Fowler.
I wouldn't object to that. I would, like, instead of saying timely manner, due to the fact that Mr. Inwood, Mr. Vickers have expressed the heavy workloads, I would say tentatively July 15th. That puts a bit of a more firm touch on it, but it's saying tentatively. So in essence, that if life tends to get in the way, right, we still have that little bit of wiggle room to move it back to the next meeting after that, if possible.
Okay, and is your seconder okay with that change?
Apparently he is.
Okay. All right. All in favor of the motion to amend? Thank you. And all in favor of the motion as amended? Thank you. Was that the end of our pulled items? It was. So now we've got the RISE recommendation, and that is, oh, Mr. Parkin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just really quickly, we haven't had this come up very often, but it is past our procedural bylaw 10 p.m. Timeline. If you just do a quick procedural motion to extend to 11, I think we're almost done. So
thank you. Yeah. So moving to Councillor Fowler and Deputy Mayor Davidson, all in favor? Thank you. And the RISE recommendation, I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Van Berkel, Councillor Sati, all those in favor? That's carried. And considerate the adoption of the recommendations from Committee of the Whole. Councillor Ices and Councillor Waters, all those in favor? That's carried. And any notices of motion? Seeing none. Announcements. Any announcements? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, cognizant of the time, just didn't want to let this go past. Just want to mention that Irene Cartwright at Cookstown is turning 97 on Monday. And although we definitely respect the fact that South Simcoe and Innisfil Fire can't participate, I understand I have a few council members that might be providing a drive-through to give her a little bit of cheer at Royal Oak Estates in Cookstown at 3 o'clock on Monday. Just want to congratulate her on turning 97 on Monday.
Thank you. Any other questions or any other announcements? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just reflecting back on my first Canada Day Sandy Cove Parade last year. I understand that in the pandemic that we're in, that all of us councillors won't be able to participate, but I would like to wish all the residents a very happy Canada Day, as we won't be able to walk through there and enjoy a nice July 1st. So happy Canada Day, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sandy Cove is having a parade this year, but it's residents driving their own vehicles around the park, waving our flags. So we will be thinking of you. And I just wanted to say, for the first time ever, Sandy Cove has had their first bear visit. And there was I don't know what they call it, scat. I don't know. I call it crap. But anyway, it was found on somebody's backyard. So it was proven that it was a bear. So we've had our first bear. So that's our excitement in Sandy Cove.
Councillor Waters, thank you, Councillor Payne.
It's a scat. That's what it's called. I just want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed our last year's Canada Day Parade at Sandy Cove Acres. Believe it or not, I've lived in Innisfil for 33 years and I never stepped foot in Sandy Cove. And I was thoroughly impressed with the community. I just thought it was, I enjoyed the walk entirely and I was really looking forward to it this year again. So I wish them all the best on Canada's Day. Even though it will be a slightly smaller parade, I'll be there in spirit.
Thank you. Did I see Councillor Van Berkel's hand? No? Okay. Councillor Sati?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo as well to all the residents, you know, a happy Canada Day. And also, you know, I missed the opportunity to even, you know, actually see council and staff members. So we're under the same strains and pressures as many families. And it is difficult times and new adjustments. And I look forward to the opportunities when we will be able to do the store openings, the getting together in the community, because it is important to be out there. And I wish all those areas that are celebrating happy Canada Day.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I will be at Sandy Cove on Wednesday, so I'll pass on all your wishes to everybody. But I also want to give a shout out. I had the chance to meet with Bylaw over the weekend, and I want to give a shout out to them. What they're being confronted with and dealing with is absolutely disgraceful by out-of-towners. And I just hope they stay safe and sound this week, and they don't hesitate for a moment to call in backup when they need it, when they're dealing with a large group from an Airbnb. Thank you very much. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you, everyone. I wanted to just have a couple of things. First, there's 2 days left to order your Innisfil 2020 book at the early bird prices. So if you haven't yet, get your order in. Tomorrow is the first day of the social distance farmers market. So I'm looking forward to going to the farmers market tomorrow. It's 1 to 6 at the rec center. And then they're also going to be setting up at the Tanger Outlet Mall on Fridays for the same time period. I also want to warn, I guess, everybody that there will be major train track work done on Killarney Beach Road. So Killarney Beach will be closed between the 20th Side Road and Corner Avenue from Friday evening at 9 o'clock until Monday morning at 5 a.m. So that road will be totally closed. And happy Canada Day, everybody. And I also will miss not only the Sandy Cove, but also the Veterans Breakfast and the Lioness Party that they always have at the Lions Hall. So yeah, but I hope everybody does enjoy it. And I'd ask staff now if they'd like to turn on their cameras and if there's any announcements from the staff that they'd like to bring forward. Mr. Rayner, do you have any
No, thank you. Given the time, Your Worship, we're very good. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, very much. And we knew it was going to be a long meeting, and I apologize for keeping everybody late, but thank you very much for all of your hard work, and happy Canada Day. Next is the confirming bylaw, and that is moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Deputy Mayor Davidson. All those in favor? That's carried. And adjournment is moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Happy Canada Day, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Happy Canada Day.